the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, good evening. How are you? It's a bit grim out there, isn't it? It's cold, I'll tell you that much. Thought my hair was going to turn to ice a bit earlier on, walking around central London. So it's going to be a dance like colder elsewhere, I'd imagine. So I hope you're tucked up snugly and warm with some nice hot something on the stove to tuck into. Gosh, wow, it's all changing, isn't it? Every 5 seconds there's some sort of U-turn. First of all, we've got the Chagos Islands with Donald Trump turning around and saying that Starmer has got this wrong. But then it seemed to be he was backing it. But then he wasn't backing it. And then he was backing it. And so it's just very hard. It's like chasing a bar of soap in the shower to keep up with this one. Similarly, with reform and the two-child benefit cap, it's back. They're bringing it back. They scrapped it. And then they said, we're actually going to make it only for British nationals who are working with children, and now they're just bringing it back. So what was the point of all of that? What is going on? Does this show actually delegation in the ranks of Reform UK? Nigel Farage actually saying, look, that's your portfolio, that is your purview, you have sovereignty over it. So very interesting. I think we're going to see a lot more coming out from Reform's intentions as they try and get themselves ship-shape to potentially form a government. And of course, the other U-turn on letting those May elections happen at local council level. Starmer, there he is, saying it's all the local council's fault. It's amazing how many people will Starmer complain before he finds the finger pointing back at himself, isn't it? And we're also going to be talking about the madness of when you dig down into the numbers of our immigration figures. It turns out only 17% of people now coming to Britain are skilled workers. 17%. That means 83% are just dependents. They're extra mouths at the table. I mean, it's just such a nonsensical thing that we're doing to this country. I do despair. Right, what are your thoughts on all the things we're talking about today? If you want to enter the debate, fine, I'd love to hear from you. 03444 499 1000 is the number to send me a WhatsApp or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. You can also send me a text message. Write the word talk before you text and ping it off to 87222. If you'd like to have a chin wag, that'd be great as well. Matt will do the vetting and make sure that you are compos mentis. 03444 499 1000 is also the number if you want to register your interest, leave your details, and we will give you a buzz back when the time permits. It's your normal network rate, so you're not paying anything extra to do it, to come and have some communal catharsis, some free therapy with Auntie Alex. Looking forward to getting your messages. So let's get cracking, shall we? We're joined by the brilliant Peter Barnes for this. Peter, how are you doing?
Well, thank you, Alex. How are you doing?
I mean, better, quite frankly. You know, I'm a 42-year-old woman with a thick skin and a strong spine, but blimmin' heck, the psycho trolls have been after me online. But if they think I'm going to somehow...
Yeah, I read your excellent Substack this morning, actually. I thought it was very good, very interesting, actually. But I have to admit, though, I've been saying the same thing about reform for quite some time. You know, I think there's a little bit of give and take in this one. I have to admit that I think the narratives that reform pushed, such as patriotism, real conservative, ideological litmus testing, as I call it, has kind of let the dogs off the leash a little bit. I think they're starting to come round and bite them back a little bit on the behind because, you know, when you start letting in Nadeem Zahawi, you know, people start to ask, well, are you the real conservatives as well? I think it's one of those. Don't get me wrong, the bigotry, the homophobia that I get and all the rest of it, absolutely abhorrent and should not exist in any political party anywhere. But the narratives and the arguments that I think Reform have made are going to be a little bit of their downfall because you're now trying to spin the very same lines people like Reform complained about when Reform was getting going and getting started. Dr. David Bull is still saying you're a startup. So you can't really have a go at Rupert Lowe for not being able to get his act together.
Oh, no, he can do what he likes politically. All I'm saying is I think that some of the people, I'm not saying all of them, but some of the people who are now involved with that have sort of exhibiting some pretty sinister overtures, let's say. I've been shocked by it. I've been shocked by it. quite frankly. I've known Rupert. We were in Parliament together, okay? And just hearing some of the things that are now being said out loud, we need to ask questions. If you're going to say that your big difference to everybody else is ethno-nationalism, we need to know how that would be prosecuted as a policy. Because you enter some pretty crazy grounds when you start doing that. So let's hear it. What are the plans?
No, 100%.
The tenacity
100%.
and audacity
I agree
of
with you on
simply
that one.
asking
Wow.
that question has unleashed everything from extreme misogyny to extreme anti-Semitism, conspiracy theory, a very clear racism. I have just been horrified by some of the things that I have seen over the last 48 hours. And what I would implore Rupert Lowe to do is, speak to your ranks, okay? You've got to deal with them because these aren't just, random people online. These are people who are going on shows, right? On behalf of the party and doing interviews and then firing off all sorts of hateful remarks in WhatsApp groups and on social media. And when I say hateful, I don't mean the left version of hateful. I mean actual, terrifying, frightening attitude. And if Rupert knows about this, then he needs to deal with it. If he doesn't, let this be a message to him. And if he does, and he's quite happy to be the commander-in-chief for it, then, well, that's a different story altogether. But I have certainly been experiencing a bit of a roller coaster, but it's the world of online. I don't care. They are children, a lot of these people, little children. Talking about children, see what I did there. Robert Jenrick is
Very
now...
well done.
Robert Jenrick's now going to reimpose the two-child benefit cap as part of reform policy. What I think is so interesting here is when that policy announcement was first made, it was just ahead of the Runcorn by-election. I can remember thinking, that's weird. Why would they do that? That doesn't feel very much like a reform-esque policy. Then it seemed to get sort of slightly amended, saying that the cap would only be lifted for working British families. And now Jenrick, who has been given the reins entirely of that portfolio, it would seem, is saying a reform government will restore the cap in full. What do you make of this?
I go back to that particular time it was announced, and a line that Nigel Farage said, I think rather shot him at the knees, I'm afraid, when he says, I don't need to do my sums because nobody else did. This was announced as a policy, basically, as a kind of throwaway kind of comment just before the by-election, in all honesty. And I do think it kind of shows the lack of credibility I think Reform have on the economy. And I think putting Jenrick there is actually a very smart move. He's a competent operator, good communicator, and he's got the brains for it, put it that way. And I do think, I said when they announced it that it was an absolute mistake, because like you said, it was going to benefit the very people that Reform voters aren't exactly in favour of getting significant amounts of handouts, which is what the policy would in fact do. If it was lifted. And I do think. Yeah, it strikes at the heart of, I think, of a major problem for Reform, and that is the economy. And I think Nigel obviously knows that. That's why he's got the team in place. I'm interested to know why it wasn't Zia or Richard, actual money men. I thought that would have been a little bit more sensible decision. But, I think one of the reasons Robert jumped was to get one of the top jobs. So I think that's the case there. It would have made sense for him to go to the Home Office, though. But, yeah, I think there'd be interesting to know the kind of backroom dealings. But in terms of the actual situation, it is the right thing to do. The policy, no matter what anybody says, is economically sound. It is the only way to stop this spiraling even more out of control. And I actually think, we have to really get to grips with the welfare bill in actual reforms, because anything Shabana Mahmood's anything Rachel Reeves is coming out with is absolute nonsense, because she has no idea what she's doing. As I would like to say, she's melted the economy away.
I was reading earlier today that there are some people now in receipt of over £60,000 worth of benefits. £60,000. The median salary in the UK is around £39,000. And if people are getting £60,000 for not working, that to me is astonishing.
Oh, without a doubt. But I think we talked about it on Friday when we said the stigma of this seems to have disappeared. You know, there's no kind of social kind of, what are you doing? It's a lot of people just say, well, I don't care anymore. And I think COVID played a big factor in that. I think the lockdowns, the furloughs, the handouts, clearly we don't have to work kind of situation, and then trying to get back into the offices is pretty much, you know, Mount Everest for most companies. And then, you know, you throw in the employment rights bill, you throw in Rachel Reeves and her terrible economic policies, like the national insurance rise. Well, you know, all of this stuff all kind of culminates together in just absolute misery, catastrophe, and what is cruising towards a very big bailout, I'm afraid. I think we're circling this territory again, because I don't think people really understand the economic situation we find ourselves in, and why these kind of policies, you know, have to be put in place, because we can't afford it. We simply cannot afford it. I mean, the most staggering thing I thought I read today was Rachel Reeves was putting a hold on defence spending to cover up the shortfall. I mean, what is she doing? What is she doing? It is absolute negligence of the highest order, and she's just doing it because, well, I don't think she's any ideas. So I think I think she is probably the worst chancellor I think we've had in a very, very long time. I really do think that. What
would be your economic forecast? Because Nigel Farage keeps reiterating he thinks there's going to be an early general election, and citing really some form of economic collapse as a result. Do you think that could be happening? Is that sort of coming over the horizon towards Britain?
I think we're already living in it. I think look at the employment figures today. Look at the kind of major stores closing down. What was also interesting, the European Union announced a new reform between France and Germany to make their service industry so much better. That is what they're coming for. They're coming for our services. If they take that, if we lose the city, we are in a world of hurt. And that was very quietly announced today while everybody was fussing over other things. But I do think, in terms of where we are, we're already living in the collapse. We're collapsing at the moment, and so I think we have to start kind of bailing out the water and putting some beams up to kind of hold the ceiling in, because unfortunately that's the situation that we're in. I always like to say, start buying tinned goods.
Wow, really? But no, it is looking back at some of the things that Robert Jenrick is doing, you could be mistaken for thinking that this does feel a little bit like a continuation of the Conservatives. When he talks about wanting to maintain the Office for Budget Responsibility, saying, oh, well, it just needs to be reformed a little bit, whereas everybody knows that OBR essentially straitjackets a chancellor from being able to do anything that they want to do. It prevents any government from coming in with any sort of radical change of direction when it comes to economic policy, which just seems very safe, very conservative. Maybe this is just realpolitik, and when you actually look at things and want to conduct politics, you make all these promises, and then the reality of the situation when you're potentially going to be in government suddenly takes on a very different hue.
Oh, without a doubt. It's one of the reasons, manifestos shouldn't be legally binding, because events, dear boy, events, as Harold Macmillan once said. These things happen. realpolitik kicks in. Unfortunately, I think one of the US senators said, you campaign in poetry, but you govern in prose. You have to get the hard yards, you have to do the work. And unfortunately, I think, you've got the tweets from Richard Tice, and I think from Nigel as well, where they say, like, it's got to go, you got to scrap it, all that kind of thing. But that's the poetry. When you get into office, that's when the realpolitik kicks in. That's when you realise, you can't just tear the system apart on day one. You have to dismantle it slowly and replace it with something that works. And I think that's what reform have to start conveying now. It's not just about tearing down. It's about building up. It's what are you going to put in place, which is where, obviously he's got the new people in place, and, they'll take the lead on that, hopefully. But that's the next step. Because that's how you get the kind of middle centrist voter who's not really political. They want to know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and how much it's going to cost. They want the hard yards. You've got the ideological capture. You now need to get to the next stage, and that's where Nigel is pushing ahead. I just wish he'd done it a little bit sooner, considering the situation of if the government collapses and we end up with a government, with a bit of a hodgepodge of everything, I think a clear economic policy by every party isn't the least we could ask for when considering the damage that could be done. Because my fear is the market might collapse, but the Labour Party don't care. They don't understand it. They don't understand the gilt markets. They don't understand any of that. So they'll just plough ahead anyway. They'll blame it on the Tories. They'll blame it on, fossil fuels or, lack of DEI or whatever. And then they'll plow ahead. So that this idea that, an economic crisis could bring down the government. Well, it should do, but lots of things should have brought down Keir Starmer already, and he's still there. This isn't politics as normal.
It's not politics, it's more. Finally, let's go through some of the other things that Robert Jenrick announced. His sort of keystone speech, really, since he's become keynote speech, since he's become what Reform are calling Shadow Chancellor. He wants to end abuse of the Motability Scheme. OK. Right, we all know the Motability Scheme's gone mad, that 1 in 5 cars on the road are being given to people who claim to need it for some sort of disability. But we don't really understand what that involves. Ensure mental health welfare payments require a clinical diagnosis. Again, let's be specific here. Is that a doctor's note, or do you actually have to go see a trained psychiatrist who can actually say, yes, this person's definitely got A, B and C? What's the wait time on that? Mandate in-person assessments for sickness or disability benefit to be received. Again, I don't know how far that differs and how much that is going to cut off welfare payments. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I want to know. And this sounds very familiar. Not cut taxes until the party had generated fiscal headroom to do so. Again, realpolitik. None of this. The minute we get in, we're going to suddenly, I don't know, do things radically different with the economy, which I think in many respects would have been Nigel's tilt from previous things he has said. But Jenrick seems to be coming in going, I've sat in cabinet, that's not going to be possible.
Yeah, this is my big problem, though, is that any amount of movement is more movement than we've had on the economy for, about 30 years. This is why there's such a problem. The people who run the economy have basically said that stagnation is the same as stability, and we need the jolt. My big fear is that Jenrick might be a little bit too cautious, or Nigel might be a little bit overconfident. We need to kind of match those moods in the middle. And actually, like you said, I think when we get the detail, we might be able to say whether it is more radical. But like you said, we're still lacking in that detailed bit. And I think this is where they really have to nail it down, because, again, look at what we're doing now. We're talking about vague ideas, which sound great. But as we get closer, you're dealing with mortgages, you're dealing with jobs, you're dealing with a country that is very tense on the economy right now, that is feeling the pinch, that the cost of living crisis is back with a vengeance. It's the sequel nobody asked for. No. And yet, the prospective government, the Prime Minister perspective, is a little cagey on the issue. And I think that is a big problem. And it's a key point for Rupert to jump on. But also, it's a key moment for people like Zach Polanski to start peddling his nonsense as well. It's saying, you're only feeling this because of all the rich people, or, because of the Jews or whatever. You know what this lot are like. And I think this is the big thing, is that it's opportunity loss is what Douglas Murray called it, is whilst we focus on, the little things, the big things for too long have gone uncorrected. And unfortunately, we should have been doing that while we try to figure out what a woman was for God knows how many years.
I know.
And yet we still don't implement that.
Oh, I know. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. All right, stick with us, Peter. There's more to talk about after the break. Before we go to break, I'm going to read some of your messages. Robin Portsmouth says, I'm thinking beret, bicycle and some onions. All right. Or maybe it should be a swag bag. I don't know. Do I look like Burglar Bill, or do I look like, Breton someone? Joanna in Salisbury, the Chagos Islands. Philip Sands confirmed in June 25 he was granted Mauritian citizenship in 2020 via a special ministerial decree, meaning he will not pay tax on his little earner. Indeed. And do you know how? Why? Because Mauritius are going to essentially cut taxes because we're giving them a load of money to have the Chagos Islands, which gives them the ability to do this. It's all very dodgy, to say the least. Glad to see you sold all your onions, says Wayne in Rugby. Oh, you're really enjoying this, you guys, aren't you? So I guess that's two people now. This must be the French look and not Burglar Bill, or sort of wrong aspect ratio, Newcastle United. Oh, you're on a narrow boat with the stove lit. That sounds beautiful. How come Starmer blames local councils for wanting to cancel the elections when it was him and his government that gave them the option to do so? Exactly. We're going to be discussing that after the break. And Kevin Gates said, I've got your message. The Formula One season's about to start soon, isn't it? And I wouldn't mind watching it from a villa in Lanzarote as it happens. Sounds great. And Abergavenny, lovely town, has been given consent to a mosque. What's a shame? What a shame, says Lynn. Didn't that used to be the Historic Library or something? It was some sort of municipal or civic building, as I understand, that there was a big discussion about whether or not it could become an Islamic centre, and it has. OK, right, let's take a short break now. Keep your thoughts coming in. 0344499 1000. I can see a couple of you potentially ringing up as well. It would be so good to chat to some of you. It's what we call in the trade a bit of a slow news day today. Not really anything big or juicy to sink our teeth into, so let's all get together and have a chit-chat instead. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. Right, talk before you text, and I'll see you just after this.
I have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
You know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sir Keir Starmer, the man who is never at fault. It's everyone else. It's never him. No, the buck doesn't stop, or should I say the pound doesn't stop, with the UK Prime Minister. It stops with everybody else but the UK Prime Minister. He shouldn't be blamed for anything. And it's not because he doesn't know what's going on. Nobody's telling him that's the fault. I mean, come on, what next? Well, what next is he has blamed local councils for cancelling the elections. And the government justified delays by claiming a looming reorganisation of 30 local authorities would have made the elections expensive, complicated and unnecessary. As a result, they said to local councils, do you want to have these elections or not? And guess what? People who didn't want to lose their jobs and their seats, because that's largely what all of this is about, decided they didn't want to have elections. That was until the point that we found out it was not legally sound to cancel democracy. Steve Reid, the local government secretary, then announced that elections would have to be back on. I mean, Peter, come on. I mean, this is the big question. When it comes to politics, it's amazing how many people, especially prime ministers, turn around and go, nothing to do with me, it was them. But if you're the Prime Minister and you're having cabinet meetings and you're saying around that table, what are you up to? What are you up to? What are you up to? And your local government minister says, "Yep, we're not having those elections, got all the legal stuff, it's fine, it's fine." OK, you want to get that checked out, surely?
Yeah, I have to admit, the idea that the Prime Minister should have to check what his cabinet secretaries are doing is also very concerning. But I think the big problem here is what legal advice was the government following in the first place to thought that this was ever going to be legal? I mean, so they boast about being lawyers all the time. I don't think they're particularly good ones, because as soon as the Electoral Commission came out and said you can't do this, I think this was pretty much end of story. And I think this new kind of mystery, kind of special prize of legal advice, seems to come at the, just in time, which is rather convenient. I would love to see the two bits of advice published so we can see what the government was following and, what they decided to go with. And let's be real, this is a complete victory for Reform UK. Nigel Farage of Reform led the charge on this. The Tories have got their neck ups into this. Yeah, fair enough, it was mainly the Labour Party, but the Tories should never have cancelled the elections either. And Ed Davies too busy doing Takeshi's castle for anybody to care at the moment, but yet, he still gets a lot of power, which I find terrifying every single time I say the sentence out loud. He should resign just because he's terrible. But I will say that I do think the big problem is that Keir Starmer does not put value in democracy. He doesn't put value in our rights. He doesn't understand it in the same way that we do. And I think that's the big disconnect, is that he sees it as just a way to get to the decision. He's not really interested in the sacrifice. He parrots the lines, but he doesn't understand it. And I think this is what we're really starting to see. And it's why when it comes to all the Mandelson stuff, it's his judgment. It's this bit.
But also,
why he's not fit to be Prime Minister.
He wasn't really scrutinised at all in the run-up to that election. And what we've found out now is this man has made a living out of being a barrister, but largely for things like human rights. But a lot of his cases have been representing what I would consider rather unsavoury characters who are essentially going after the UK government. And the way that, everyone deserves legal representation, that's how barristers make money, but to continually take clients who are connected to terrorists who want to sue the British state for some sort of spurious claim, and then be able to win by essentially using legal loopholes and these little get-out clauses. I didn't know, that wasn't written on time, that submission was made too late, that I wasn't dotted, that T wasn't crossed. Therefore, you've got to give this terrorist a load of money. It reflects a man who has never had the national interest at heart, who will essentially be able to slither and argue and wriggle around any sort of claim, because that's what he's done all his life. And he is behaving like an anti-British faux human rights lawyer now in office.
Yes, without a doubt, you're correct on every single point there. But I called him somewhat of the Walter Mitty of the human rights law, because he always seems to be around, like when everything's happening, but he's never involved in it enough to be implicated very clearly. And I find that it's like, is he actually somewhat of a genius? We've all massively underestimated him, and then I realised no, it's Keir Starmer. Like, he's just things happen around him, and he's somewhat, like I say, Walter Mitty, just wandering through life, or like Forrest Gump, and everything is there presented to him. But I still find it staggering that he rose this far politically with this kind of attitude. I mean, he speaks very highly of not very highly of the Labour Party, because, considering the fact that they elevated this man who doesn't believe in anything. He is the epitome of what I've called the managerial class. That kind of, they just want to kind of get through it, manage decline, and exit gracefully. That's Keir Starmer. The Britain's done, UK's done. Our influence not there anymore. All by his choice, all by his policies, and he's slowly dismantling everything. That's why you've got the Chagos, that's why you've got the deals with China. It's all about ceding away sovereignty, ceding away power, and relevance. That's what he's giving away, relevance. And he's doing it mainly through the British electorate by just denying the most basic thing that a government should do, and that's making sure that we get a say in who that government is, and no matter at what level. And I start to feel that we're cruising towards having a much stricter and much firmer constitution and legal framework to prevent a Keir Starmer again from messing around with our elections, because I don't care how much they cost. I don't care about I don't care about that. They are important. They are the principal method of us having a say. And he took that away with the snap of his fingers. Luckily, we had the legal case, but he only reacted at the last minute.
But this is
that tells you everything.
Paradigm Starmer, isn't it? I will wait for the evidence to be put in front of me. I'll wait for the inquiry. I'll wait for the official report. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't decide anything, and he always manages to get around culpability by getting someone else to write a report that then he reads, and that makes his decision for him. He's utterly inert. Okay, let's take another short break. Go pour yourself a drink, why don't you? It's that sort of evening, isn't it? And I'll see you just after.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Right, Labour. Are they going to be the people to save us from the ridiculous barrage of immigration that has been bombarding the country for the last 2 decades? Well, no, according to experts at Oxford University, because Labour's plan to train up more British workers will not actually reduce migration. The government has pledged to improve training of young people to combat rising worklessness and reduce the reliance on skilled foreign workers. But this report has warned that the approach is unlikely to succeed because only 17% of non-EU citizens who come to Britain on a visa are using the skilled foreign worker scheme. I mean, Peter, come on. You can appreciate that in their first year, you put a policy in place and then it takes a while for it to have the real world impact. But this is a year and a half now, and we're in a situation where only 17% of non-EU citizens who come to Britain, they're coming for the handouts.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I could have told you this policy wasn't going to work because it wasn't properly funded, it wasn't properly written out, it was just yet to get another, what would they call it, a bumper sticker. It's just like, look what we're going to try and do, and yet they never follow through. This is the big problem with the government, and its successive governments have been very guilty of this, is they announce something, and they think that's it. Like, we've announced a plan. You've got to implement it. You've got to do it. You've got to actually then fix it and make sure it's workable. Find the weaknesses. Like you said, you've got to wait for the real world impact. When that comes, you make adjustments. They just don't do that. Well, I always like to say we do the risk assessment, but we don't assess the risk. We don't confront it. And I think this is the big problem. But I don't think that the migrant crisis is going to be solved by any one particular problem, one particular policy, sorry. And I think this is one thing we have to get out of thinking, silver bullet policies, but we have to start coming with packages of policies on particular issues, on particular areas, to make sure that we start, attacking it in multiple angles and multiple different ways. Don't get me wrong, smash the gangs is very important, but you've got to do the rest of it. You've got to attack the snake at both ends. And unfortunately, we don't do that because we don't think longer than the end of our nose. We've got to get through the headline, get through the day, because the government has no idea what it's doing. Because as you've rightly said, Alex, this government was held under no scrutiny during that general election, and we're living in the consequences of it now. The mainstream media have a lot to answer for when it comes to putting this lot in office, because they obsessed over all the wrong things.
Yep. And
we're living in a very bad situation because of it.
And they're still not scrutinising him. They're still not running reports into who's behind the Chagos deals. They're still not looking at whether Starmer's ever culpable of anything. But what I really don't understand is who brought in the first place this crazy policy that you could come over here and study and bring your family with you. That is madness. And all the things that Labour seems to be putting in place, Labour's tightening rules for skilled foreign workers by requiring them to have a degree. Right. Employers will be allowed to recruit low-skilled workers, but on a points-based system and only in critical sectors. Right. Employers will be permitted to hire overseas workers, but only on a temporary basis. Right. Employees face being stripped of their visa sponsor licence if they fail to show they're investing in training the domestic workforce. Right. I mean, I remember at one point there was like kebab shops handing out skilled worker visas, for crying out loud. But that's all right, because that's 17% of the immigration. The other 83% are just randos, wives, cousins, nans, children, I don't know, people who aren't coming here to work. Who on earth thought it was okay to say to someone, if you want to come and study at one of our world-leading universities, envies of the world, a lot of our institutions, you can bring all your blimmin' relatives. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's absolutely mental, and I would love to know actually who came up with that idea. I have a feeling, though, it would be interesting to know if say a foreign nation may have had something to do with it, because let's not forget our university sector is run basically by the Chinese. So I wonder if this was a part of kind of a deal there, maybe something to do with doctors, and we have a lot of overseas doctors training here as well. I wonder if this has been part of a kind of like trade deal, like a bit of kind of a footnote that nobody bothered to read, and yet here we are. That sounds a very British British problem. But yeah, this idea that you can just bring everybody, because one of the problems we have is people are faking being related to people and then using our services like the NHS. You know, I read a story a couple of weeks ago of this very situation where it turns out that nobody was actually related to this one person, and about 6 people had come with them, and they were all kind of using the services and using the resources that should rightly go to the people that are paid into the system their entire lives. And yet again, they're the ones that are being pushed to the back of the queue. They're the ones that have to wait for the blood tests, the appointments, all of this stuff, because it's not just the kind of the immediate problem, it's the knock-on effects, it's the secondary and tertiary issues that come with, you know, using a government state provided resource. And unfortunately, yet again, it's the British people that pay, not only physically, but pay ultimately, I'm sadly to say, with their lives. Because, you know, the most people who are coming off the wait list, you know, they're not doing it because they finally got the surgery, I'm afraid.
No, indeed. Quite a dismal point to make, but without doubt a truism. Let's talk now about Chagos, shall we? Yes. Because there's been this, just before I came on air, this revelation that Donald Trump has said. I've been telling Prime Minister Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom that leases are no good when it comes to countries, and he's making a big mistake by entering a 100-year lease with whoever it is that is claiming right, title and interest to Diego Garcia, strategically located in the Indian Ocean. That'd be Mauritius, by the way, Mr. Trump. Our relationship with the United Kingdom is a strong and powerful one, and it has been for many years, but Prime Minister Starmer is losing control of this important island by claims of entities never known of before. In our opinion, they are fictitious in nature. Well, we know they're fictitious in nature. We know they are because it has been revealed in Philip Sands' own book on the giveaway of the Chagos Islands that he said to works basically hand in glove with China and Russia. So it wouldn't seem as if, well, Russia better give back Crimea as well because this is landed in the law. No. That it was actually on some spurious, wishy-washy, woke claims about decolonisation. So, of course, they're fictitious. Mr. Trump needs to ask Sir Keir Starmer about some of his mates, perhaps. But then he says, should Iran decide not to make a deal? Because, of course, everything is now poised on the brink of there being military action against the regime in Tehran. It may be necessary for the United States to use Diego Garcia and the airfield located in Fairford in order to eradicate a potential attack by a highly unstable and dangerous regime, an attack that would potentially be made on the United Kingdom as well as other friendly countries. Donald Trump is right on this. What he is saying is, look at the world we live in. Iran was trying to make a nuclear weapon. Look how they violently oppressed their own people. Look at them partially closing the Strait of Hormuz at the moment for military drills, apparently, but essentially proving to the world that they can massively disrupt the flow of oil from east to west and essentially control energy and control economies in doing so. Look at how they've funded terror organisations, and look at the fact that America now have had to send a lot of their kinetic hardware and assets into the region, so they're poised and ready to be able to move against Iran if that threat continues or if Iran don't show any degree of compromise. And one of the most essential places for that in terms of geolocation is the Chagos Islands. I mean, it is astonishing to me that such a, you know, people talk a lot about the Chagosians, these islanders now who have gone back and saying, you know, this is our land, we were thrown off it, we want to be here. And essentially the UK government saying, oh, well, you can't. You're all going to be fined or put in prison if you try to do that. I understand all of those things. It's heartbreaking. It's horrible. It's unjust. It's hypocritical. But for crying out loud, Trump needs to, you know, be able to have direct access to Iran militarily, and he's going to need Diego Garcia to do that. And it is so perilous to hand over military strategic territory. And that is what this government is still pushing to do.
Oh, without a doubt. It's quite handy, actually, because I've just written an entire article on the issue of the Chagos Islands, and it's actually about looking at this from a kind of what I call the operator perspective. In other words, yes, it's very sad about what's happened to the Chagosians. However, the strategic importance of Diego Garcia and the Chagos Islands to not just the Middle East, but as a launch pad into the Indo-Pacific, which is the second theatre where a lot of stuff is going to happen in the next few years, is beyond important. And basically, what the Trump administration is saying is what they call about permissions. It's basically, can the US act unimpeded at speed and everything be there and working if anything is suddenly happens and what they call the tempo increases. So this is the point. This is why it's all about the kind of clear routes, clear paths, because it's about the speed and it's about intercepting. It's about waiting times. It's about knowing that the security and the defense of our nation and the West is secure and is strong. And unfortunately, Keir Starmer and the Labour government is a significant weak link. They keep cozying up to China. He said at the Munich Security Council, Keir Starmer, that we can't rely on Donald Trump. No, Donald Trump can't rely on us.
Yes.
That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
I've said for a long time that it is the European side of NATO that is going to collapse it.
Yes.
Donald Trump is renegotiating it because we could barely make 2%. And that Trump's suddenly saying, well, wait a minute, there's a bit of a kind of situation in the world happening right now. Taiwan is poised to be invaded by China, and then when that happens, the world changes fundamentally.
Yeah.
And yet we just keep wanting to have nice little films about human rights and all this kind of thing. It's not the real world. It's not the world that keeps us safe. It's not the world that keeps the lights on and the food coming in, because that's what Trump is trying to do.
Yeah.
The idea that anybody should stand in this man's way on Greenland or on the Chagos Islands is preposterous, and is nothing more than Trump derangement syndrome and orange man bad takes. It is pathetic and should not be listened to.
Absolutely brilliant there from Peter Barnes. I think that summed it up perfectly. Looking at the way that the Europeans are handling defence, they've been pushing for PESCO for a long time, which massively undermines NATO. Because if you've got NATO, which is a cooperation largely of the Western world, and all of a sudden the Europeans are going off and doing their own things, their own drills, their own communications, their own sharing of intelligence, and essentially excluding America, pushing out everybody else, that will massively threaten NATO. And the problem with the Europeans is they always, rather than just thinking, right, we've got to work together, it gets so political, so short-sighted, so pathetic, so pedantic. And I'm thinking at the moment of this joint cooperation on defence procurement that Starmer's signing us up to with the EU. And largely it's about, right, let's give some more weapons to Ukraine to stop Russia. OK, fine. But France has turned around and said, oh, if the British want us to, use their weapons as well, and they want in on this, they're going to have to pay billions of pounds for the purpose, and they're going to have to use EU components. Why are they straitjacketing defence spending, arms development with stupid tittle-tattle, just all of this rubbish about you've got to pay this, you've got to use European parts. No! Let's have your weapons. Your weapons are needed. Make them how you like, with who you like. Just get a load of them manufactured right now, please.
Well, unfortunately, we can't do that because we don't have the manufacturing ability. Even America is actually struggling when it comes to certain missiles and certain apparatus that we might need in the future, particularly where if like land conflict happens. We have let this slip. So the idea that we could actually just even we've got to build the factories to build the weapons first. I'm afraid this is how far we have actually let the issue of security and defence fall, because basically we just didn't pay attention to it. Yet again, it is the most important thing at the end of the day, because you can have all your little policies you like, but if you don't have a country, it's not safe and secure, then the rest of it is rather, it's nonsense, I'm afraid. And I do think we left the foreign policy stuff to kind of niche people, like the kind of, the professors and the academics. We didn't live in the real world, what's known as the hard power. We let that slip away. We keep thinking that soft power is the real thing. That's Europe's big problem. That's why they don't do anything, because they don't think they have to. They're living on, the history of World War II. Well, I'm afraid World War III is pretty much around the corner, and we've had quite a few bits in between. And I was always told you're only as good as your last game. And basically, Europe stinks at the minute. And unfortunately, we've got to get rid of our leaders. We've got to really reshape NATO into a partnership, not a friendship. This is one thing that they keep getting wrong. We're not friends with America. We're partners. We bring something, they bring something, and we keep getting our bit falling down again and again and again.
Yeah.
That attacks our credibility. That's why we're cut out, because we are a liability at the moment. We can't even defend our own air bases in our own country, thanks to these kind of
Palestine action and all that.
It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
I know. It's craziness.
That idea that was some kind of protest. It wasn't. It was sabotage. It was operational sabotage. There were planes there that are needed for operations in Europe. If something happens, and we were not at the table. We were not ready, thanks to that group, and yet nothing really has happened. No real improvements have been made. And yet we had a press release, and that was it.
Yeah.
Welcome to Britain in 2026. We are not safe. with this lot in charge.
No, we're not. We're not safe and we're not serious. Peter, stick with us and let's meet up on the other side of these short commercials. Put the kettle on, pour a drink. Hear that sort of nice, gentle tss as you pull the ring pull on your pint of lager. Or that lovely glug, 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 glug as the wine tumbles gently into the glass. And I'll see you in a moment.
I have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America.
That is why I said the use of tariffs against allies is completely wrong.
You know, the fact that they had a boat land there 500 years ago doesn't mean that they own the land. We're not going to have Russia or China occupy Greenland. So we're going to be doing something with Greenland either the nice way or the more difficult way.
Any decision about the future status of Greenland belongs to the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, just reading through some of your messages. Mark, give us a call. We're going to get you on today. You said you've been trying to get through on this show all week. Just ring, ring, ring. Don't know what's going on there, but if you phone 0344 499 1000, hopefully someone will pick up the phone, write down your details, and we can have a natter. Evening, Alex and Peter. I watched a good interview with Niall Gardner on Guido Fawkes. He was saying Washington are up in arms over Chagos and view Starmer as a puppet of China and the EU, says Darryl in Blackburn. Well, he is. Noel Gardner's brilliant. Having a bit of lunch with him on Friday. He's a good mate of mine and he knows what he is talking about. Alex and Peter are on fire tonight. What a team. Keep it up, says Francis in Devon. I tell you what, Francis, that's the opposite of the way I feel. I'm in zombie mode today. I really am.
Same.
I've got this sort of Wednesday hump day thing where I'm sort of like, you know, I could actually just get into fetal position, cover myself in newspapers under the desk, and within about 30 seconds you'll hear a gentle animal snore rising up from the floor. That is how weary I feel. Yes, winter's gone on.
I'm going to say
a
mine's
long
not a
time.
gentle snore at this point. Mine's definitely not a gentle snore.
It's all you, Peter. You're the one who's doing the heavy lifting tonight. I'll tell you that much. I honestly...
don't know, somebody literally on X has just said, you look very tired tonight. I was like, thanks.
Great. Yeah, look at this. John's just said, I'm applauding Peter. Alex, did you know US intelligence believes China have secretly carried out an underground nuclear test? China have got all sorts of things. We saw those blimmin' dancing robots the other day, the drone displays.
Yeah.
At this point, I actually don't want to know what China's capable of militarily because I think it will scare the living daylights out of me.
Oh, without a doubt. The one thing you have to look at why Greenland and why Chagos is actually the kind of in the strategic corridors for international trade, and what China is doing is they're disrupting that with the ghost fleets, but also they're going after the undersea cables, which is our major communication thread. The idea that the world is connected by cables under the sea seems preposterous to me. That like this has to be a better way of doing it at some point, because you know this is what they're doing. It's grey zone warfare, and you know they're targeting it, but they don't have to destroy it. They have to wear us down of resources and money, and they are experts at it, as are Russia, and this is what they've been doing. So when they fly into our airspace or they kind of creep off the coast, it's to test our speed, it's to test our reactions.
Yeah.
And you know, we just kind
like
of
they're
brush it
probing
off
and
under
looking
the
for the
carpet.
Achilles heel, the weak points, the area where they're going to actually be able to sneak through because we haven't noticed, we didn't see. It's alarming. Let's take a call, shall we, Peter? Because we've got Ken on the line to speak to us in London. Hi, Ken.
Hello, Alex. Thank you very much for taking my call.
What a strong London accent you have, Ken.
Very strong. But listen, I'm a Christian and I've got very strong views on Mr. Starmer. I respect the man, but I believe that he is the most dangerous, disingenuous Prime Minister in British history. I've made a list here of the things he has done.
Oh, yes, I love a list.
U-turns.
Yeah.
He's made over 15 U-turns, backtracks on previous political positions.
Mm-hmm.
He surrendered the Chagos Islands
Yeah.
to full Chinese control potentially.
Yeah.
He has cowardly refused to condemn the Muslim rape gangs because of his fear of Islamic anger and turning against him.
Yeah.
For political reasons. He has allowed China to have a gigantic Chinese embassy in the centre of London.
Yeah.
He fully supports the evil, immoral, wokery ideology. He supports it. He doesn't even know if a woman has a penis.
Right. Yeah.
Previously, and very strongly, this is an awesome thing. Previously and very strongly, I used to listen to him, he supported the evil anti-Semitic policies of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
He was a spokesman for Jeremy Corbyn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He previously mocked Donald Trump and
Yeah.
also along with Lamy, and total support Lamy was in total support. Starmer, our Prime Minister, mocked Donald Trump openly. A
Yeah.
foolish decision.
Yeah.
He surrendered his political desires to Islam. Do
Yeah.
you believe our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, because of his cowardice, I'm saying this because he's the Prime Minister. We're all sinners. I'm a Christian. But he has surrendered this country to a political religious movement who desires to destroy
Yeah.
this country. He surrendered.
Yeah.
Fear,
I
because
mean,
of fear
let's
of
bring
backlash.
Peter into this because this list, we could probably do it until 10 o'clock tonight, let's be fair.
I mean, like
for
10 o'clock
Peter,
tomorrow night.
yeah, exactly. This is it for the rest of the year now until the general election. The ever-growing list, it just never stops growing. But, you know, if I was going to add something to that, if you know, because a lot of what Ken has just listed there is disgusting. But, you know, for me, the thing that still stands out to this day is lying about Southport and then getting Richard Hermer, or Richard Hermer getting him. I never know who's the dominant one in that funny little relationship. To encourage all these people to plead guilty and not have a trial so they could be thrown in prison. That, to me, was still forever. Whatever evil he does as Prime Minister, however reprehensible and reckless his policies are, however politically illiterate he may be, and his ridiculous cohort of campaigning cabinet ministers, the thing that just stood out as cold-hearted and sinister were those prosecutions. And he knew what he was doing. He used to be the head.
Well, yeah.
He used to be the head of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but the thing that really gets me is the fact that he had a track record of doing things like this. Let's look at the Nightingale courts, the kind of dawn raids on journalists. He weaponized the law as and when it suited him. And you know, because, like I say, as we've said, the lack of scrutiny within the Labour Party and the mainstream media, well, you know, he ended up as Prime Minister, and we're living in the consequences of that. And I hope now we will have, no matter who the candidates are, we have actual scrutiny to make sure this doesn't happen again. Because the one thing about Southport I also like to remind people of is the fact that they knew about the ricin and the kind of the terrorist element of this and the potential danger of it, and they sat on it for months. And then they had the
didn't
audacity
just
to call
sit on
everybody
it. They
far-right thugs.
actually essentially tried to lie to our faces about what had gone on.
Oh,
And then
yeah,
accused
the
everyone else of
It
being
is
a
the
conspiracy
gaslighting.
theorist. Then said that was, you know, it's Nigel Farage who caused the riots when the man was in Hong Kong. These
That was
people are
despicable.
crazy. They actually do openly, brazenly lie to us, get away with it. And why do they get away with it? Because I'm looking up at these screens here, and all of these people never pull him up on anything.
Yeah, never. I mean, Rachel Reeves was once, I think it was during the general election, it was a Telegraph lead headline, Labour's secret weapon. She was Labour's secret weapon. She's a weapon,
She's
but
a-
yeah,
she's a
she should have been
blooming
kept more
weapon.
secret. I mean, the fact that was, and they allowed the kind of first female chancellor narrative. I mean, I don't care who she is. Right. She had to be good. She had to be good. And I actually think that kind of pushing that narrative and her being very bad at this has actually set women back in politics, I'm afraid, because of where they elevated the worst people. Yeah. And they do this all the time. I always say that if the BBC likes you, you're a wrong 'un or you're terrible, because it ends up in either way. Pretty much when you look at the political spectrum and who they like and who they don't, and who ends up being a little bit dodgy and all the rest of it, it tends to be the ones the BBC like. So if they like something, like the opposite.
But it's the same right now with their approach to the Green Party, massively over promoting Zach Polanski. The man's not even elected. The Green Party, polling is going up because they keep putting them on every programme because they just love it. And have they asked anything of the deputy leader and the comments he made on social media after October the 7th? No. Have they asked Zach Polanski why he weirdly changed his name? No. Have they dug any more into that odd former career of hypnotism? No. Have they asked the Green Party what their views on some of the sort of, Islamism is? No. They just parade them like they do with the Lib Dems, frankly. It's just, they're nice. They're left-wing, they're nice. It's pathetic and dangerous.
Yeah. It's dangerous. It's dangerous because I have a big fear that Zach Polanski will have a lot of power if there's a hung parliament, which I'm starting to think is the more likely situation, because that is terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because the break of the Labour Party, I always said, would come from a south pole, not a right hook. So it would always the left that would take out the Labour Party because they weren't left-wing enough. Well, that's what the Greens are offering. However, they have this streak of Islamism. Let's not forget they were recently reported for the counter-terrorism police over anti-Semitism and that. How is that not headline news?
I know, that's crazy. They're literally putting the Greens on everything all the time and not said, by the way, you've been reported to counter-terror police because of you've become a breeding ground of Islamic terrorism. Can you imagine if just one sort of the parish councillor for Reform or the Conservatives said, I don't know, said a hurty word and it'd be front page news everywhere. And you've got an actual political party reported to counter-terror police for nurturing extremism. Nothing. They just put the party on time after time. What do you think? It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, well, you always use the example when you were with UKIP and the guy who said it was because of gay marriage and the floods and all the and that kind of stuff. And that was headline news. And yet, counter-terrorism police involved in major political party on the verge of gaining a lot of power isn't worth 10 minutes. It's pathetic. I looked at the Jesse Jackson coverage the other day. I was like, he's a very important figure in America. Why are we kind of memorializing him in such, hours and hours and hours of coverage on this issue? And I'm like, it just shows this disconnect between the media and the general public, and that the fact that the more that the media push this stuff, the more the public is pushed the other way. And it will work out very well for the right, I hope. But I do think that the threat of this kind of rainbow coalition and the tactics they will use to stop reform or to stop Nigel and all this kind of stuff is terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Look what happens in Europe.
They're terrifying people.
Yeah.
Peter, I've loved having you on for this hour. Hasn't it flown by? Thank you so much for your wisdom, your brilliance, your articulation, your moral support more than anything. The brilliant Peter Barnes, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the thing that wasn't supposed to be happening that Sadiq Khan tried to silence, well, it's happening. Grooming gangs in London. That's coming up after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. Wasn't Peter Barnes wonderful? He's such a great guy. He really is. He's a national treasure. Well, he's a talk treasure. He's someone's treasure. He's my treasure at the very least. Okay. Keep your thoughts coming in on all the things we're talking about. Oh, Dan, he's not drinking tonight because he's nursing his 14-year-old dog, Taz. Maybe you should pour yourself a whiskey and give a little bit to Taz. He might like it. I don't know. Oh, my Claire in Buckley in North Wales. Starman in his sixth form cabinet actually scared the bejesus out of me. Correct. What else can he actually screw up? Our country and economy is whirlpooling down the drain. And it saddens me. Good excuse to stock up on wine and tinned meat. Looking forward to Weird Hour to cheer me up. Well, Weird Hour's not going to be as weird as it normally is, or has been. We've got Leo, though. Got the brilliant Leo Curse. We love him. It's going to be Weird half hour tonight, but still, we'll make it as weird as we can for you and try and put that smile back on your face. I'll tell you what, I could do cheering up as well. Starmer is the result of accidental promotion to a level which is way beyond his abilities. This happens in the public sector when someone is promoted to a position where they can't do any damage. Unfortunately, sometimes they're so bad, they keep getting promoted multiple times right to the top. That's interesting. Let's read this again. Starmer is the result of accidental promotion to a level way beyond his abilities. Is it accidental? I'm just going to let that sit with you, because the more I sort of look at the coterie, the cartel of legal eagles around him, who for a long time now, and their connections run deep and wide. They were sort of connected to Blairite Labour. Was he accidentally made leader of the Labour Party, or is he there as their stooge? I don't know. Just asking. The fact that I even asked the question suggests you know the way I'm thinking. And Joanna at Salisbury, universities for overseas, it's worse than bringing up to 6 people with them. They're borrowing fee money that's higher than our own students and not paying it back. Oh gosh, if you get into the unpaid student loans, I mean, student loans, we need to reopen that whole topic, can I just say. The situation with student loans is mad, and I didn't realise quite how mad it was until I spoke to my friend who's 30 and still trying to pay off bits of his, a huge amount of student loan. He's making really good money. I mean, thankfully, when I went to university, tuition fees were about $3,000 a year. Then they went up to whatever, $9,000 a year. Then was it 12 grand? I don't know. And so, oh no, only the top universities will be charging that. Of course, they all charged it. And then the compound interest is rolling. So they keep putting 7% on every single month. And it's the one thing, if you go bankrupt, you've still got to pay off. The student loan situation in this country is abysmal. And I would recommend to any political party, if you want to get the votes of young people, you need to be looking into that quite seriously. It is a huge unexploded debt bomb as well. Anyway, I digress. Let's now talk about this. I don't know if you remember the viral incident when Susan Hall, the leader of the Conservatives in the London Assembly, was asking London Mayor Sadiq Khan whether there were grooming gangs in London. What do you mean? Spell it out, he kept saying, challenging her, wanting her to say Asian or Muslim or Pakistani so he could then play the race card. You know what I mean, she kept saying. Are there grooming gangs in London? I don't know what you mean. You're going to have to spell it out. Anything to divert, digress, disturb, demonise. Guess what? Of course there are rape gangs in London. If they're happening in pretty much all the other towns and cities around the country, why would the capital be exempt, especially in the capital, is even more multicultural, especially when you look at certain boroughs of the capital, which are dominated by exactly the sort of men who have been committing these crimes. And when I say dominated, I just don't mean demographically. I mean in terms of political representation in local authorities as well. Well, it turns out girls as young as 14 are being lured into a world of forced sex by gangs in London. Some have told the BBC they've been raped by several men as payments for unpaid drug debts run up by the gangs that controlled them. Others say they were just groomed for sex. Now, the BBC's evidence is based on interviews with people in the capital over several weeks, 5 survivors of gang-based violence. It shows how little girls are being lured by men into dealing drugs, trading weapons, stealing phones. One police officer in London said young girls and women were the lowest rung in gangs and were groomed and exploited for everything. Last year, Sadiq Khan said there was no indication of grooming gangs. A spokesperson, though, for Sir Sadiq, recently told the BBC he wanted to support police do everything possible to tackle all child exploitation in the capital, including grooming gangs. Well, let's speak now to Simon Danchuk, former Labour MP and reform detector. I mean, Simon, you were MP in a constituency where grooming gangs were rife. The idea that they weren't operating in London was evidently for the birds. Of course they were. The games that Khan has played over this, and is still playing over this, are frightful. I think if we really knew what was going on, because it isn't just going to be the sort of faith-based grooming gangs, which I'm sure operate in London, as they did in places like Rotherham, Rochdale, Bradford, et al. We're now learning that there's sort of these county lines gangs as well, exploiting women, because this is what happens with criminality. It's all interlaced. Drugs, prostitution, trafficking, weapons, it's all interlaced. And it sounds to me like if we really even understood 1% of what goes on in some of London's boroughs, we'd be horrified.
Yeah, absolutely, Alex. And the other point to make is that these sorts of crimes don't know geographical boundaries, do they? But the idea that London would be immune from this type of crime is an absolute nonsense. And all credit to Susan Hall, a London Assembly member, who called, you referred to that, where she called Khan out, Sadiq Khan out on it. All credit to her for that. The major problem here is having politicians like Sadiq Khan denying that there's an issue, denying that there is a problem, effectively emboldens the perpetrators of these horrific crimes to continue. That's what we saw in Rochdale, where I used to be a member of Parliament. We saw it in Rotherham as well. But this issue has been going on for a considerable amount of time. I used to be a councillor in Blackburn in the 1990s. And I always remember I was a very junior member of the council. I was 27 at the time. And I remember two senior Labour councillors talking about Asian taxi drivers pulling up outside children's homes in Blackburn and picking up young girls. And that was in the 1990s, and it was going on then. They weren't trying to cover it up. I think they came up with a solution and policed it and everything else. So, but I just recall that conversation taking place. Anne Cryer, Labour MP in Halifax, in the late 90s, early 2000s, raised this, and she was ostracised by people within the Labour Party for doing it. And then you fast forward to 2012, and then you have the Rochdale grooming scandal break. I was the MP at the time, knew very little about the subject, but I quickly came to understand it. And as you've pointed out, you had gangs, in that instance, gangs of Asian men, Muslim men, exploiting young white girls. No doubt about it. Some of it very much interlinked with criminology, taxi driving, takeaways and everything else. But it was operating all over the country. Let's be honest about this.
Yeah.
For Sadiq Khan to deny it, I think is totally deplorable. Utterly, it just emboldens the perpetrators. I think it's utterly disgraceful, actually.
Oh, totally. I mean, well done for the BBC for actually doing this investigation. But in typical BBC fashion, they then give some of the examples of their case studies. And the first one, of course, it's the first one they put up there. It's she'd been groomed by 3 white men in the capital. She was initially forced to deal drugs. The exploitation got worse. She was made to have sex to keep people on side if the gang owed them money, or to entice people to buy drugs from the gang. And so that is the first one they do, the first case study. Then all the others, guess what? The other examples they have is, here's one. Millie, not her real name. Her experience of grooming gangs in London did not involve selling drugs, mirrored what happened in towns and cities such as Rotherham, Rochdale and Oldham. She was 15, passed around different men every night, sometimes 10 or 15 a month. And do you know when this happened? A few years ago. So this has taken place since the whole issue of the grooming gangs exploded. Another London survivor exploited for sex. They didn't want anything but sex. They were South Asian men. They took advantage of me. It is happening in London, and those who don't believe it need to look again. Of course it is. The Met has now announced it's going to re-examine at least 1,200 cases of child sexual exploitation following a national review into group-based child sexual exploitation. 1,200. I mean, I just, emphasise that, saying that is a lot of girls who have clearly been neglected by the system. But I think you and I both know, Simon, that will be the tip of the iceberg.
Undoubtedly, and still going on to this day, I am in no doubt about that. But London is behind the curve on this, and there's one primary reason for that, because Sadiq Khan refused to accept that there was an issue with it. And if you don't accept there's an issue, you won't deal with the problem. So London are really behind the curve. You've got Greater Manchester, South Yorkshire. Looking at Greater Manchester, we got rid of Sir Peter Fahey, the Chief Constable, who failed to act on many of the crimes, these types of crimes. Thankfully, he went and retired, as they always do. Now, Steve Watson, who's in there now, one of the best chief constables we've probably got in the United Kingdom. He takes a much harder line on this, and we are seeing prosecutions, historical prosecutions, even from Rochdale still. But they're beginning to get ahead of the curve. That's not the case in London, because Sadiq Khan has denied that there's been an issue, and that's meant there's been no pressure on the Met Police and the Met Commissioner to take action until very recently. Yeah. And as you point out, now some of his frontline police officers, I think 27,000, have recently had training on this very issue, but they are behind the curve.
Massively behind the curve. And do you know what is so vital to keep reminding ourselves of all of this is we were told by Baroness Casey that one of the reasons why these girls weren't taken seriously, one of the reasons why this issue was not tackled is because no one wanted to offend the Muslim community. And also that there were people involved in essentially covering it up from that community. And here we have the London mayor in plain sight being cross-examined by his counterpart doing exactly that.
Oh, Khan has been playing politics with this very issue, doesn't want to upset the Muslim vote on which he relies. But the same with Starmer and the National Labour Party. They've played the exact same game. If it wasn't for Louise Casey's report, they would never have been dragged into having a national rape gang inquiry, which we're eventually going to get. But they've been dragging their feet on that. But they didn't even want that because they're worried about losing votes. They're worried about upsetting the Muslim community. And they still celebrate multiculturalism, which I would argue has caused this problem in the first place.
It's, yeah, I mean, I just don't know when this, where and how this all ends. When you look at some of the boroughs in London, and, it is, I think, very similar to some of those old manufacturing towns in the north. They're dominated now. It's very hard to access the people who wield power, not necessarily, how did you find it as an MP, by the way? Because, people think, well, the MP, you're top of the tree. But actually, as far as I can tell, in some of these towns, there's a huge network of people that you just would never be able to penetrate.
Well, I had to go to war with the Labour council leader in Rochdale at the time. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you could find the press cuttings if you wanted to. But I challenged him. He was denying that there was an issue, that there was a problem, defending the council officials whilst I were calling them out. All this is in the public domain. But I had to go to war with the local Labour council leader over this very issue. And you've got, but very many Labour politicians just won't challenge that. I had senior Labour figures say to me, listen, stop mentioning the ethnicity, the religion of the perpetrators. Will lose votes. It won't do you any good. I had people from Labour members who were Muslim writing to the local Rochdale Observer saying, remember who put you into power, Danchuk. could stop attacking us, stop calling us out on this very issue. Of course, I ignored all of it. It probably didn't do me any good politically, but I always used to say, in the constituency office to the team that we had, I'd rather lose the election than not raise these issues. I genuinely believed it was important.
This is what is so immoral and wicked. The fact that people were thinking about their own poxy jobs or putting their party first when little girls were being horrifically raped. I mean, I still think good work by Rupert Lowe in holding his inquiry into all of this. I think I would like to see him now focus on those private prosecutions, keep this issue afloat, raise money to be able to get these victims privately prosecuting people in the public services who let them down. That to me is of vital importance, because I don't trust this government with their national inquiry to actually reveal or do anything about this. Heads will not roll, people will not be held accountable, and the people who shamefully, disgracefully covered it up, silenced it, as far as I'm concerned, essentially have blood on their hands, for want of a better phrase.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned the inquiry from Rupert Lowe. Myself and Susan Hall gave evidence to Rupert Lowe's inquiry last Friday afternoon. She was just giving evidence before me, and we had a chat when she had finished, and then I went in and gave evidence as well. And very pleased to cooperate with that inquiry, and all credit to Rupert Lowe and the other people involved in making that happen. But you're right, it's not just about the perpetrators. And if you read the BBC article that we've been referring to, and one of the reasons that this has come to light today, there's a quote from the Home Office about prosecuting the perpetrators, but we want action against those that enabled the crimes to be committed.
Exactly.
The social workers who called the girls prostitutes. You can't be a prostitute under the age of 16.
These girls would not have repeatedly been raped if those people were doing their jobs in safeguarding, in being the gatekeepers of the law. Those people have it's absolute disgusting negligence, and they should face criminal prosecutions. I really think they should.
Absolutely.
If you're a building firm and you've not done your due diligence on the material you're using and it leads to a fire, or if you are a vehicle manufacturer and the car's been put together shoddily and it leads to a road traffic accident, you get prosecuted. If you are a social worker who's not dealt with or tried to create safeguarding for vulnerable children because you're worried about, I'm sorry, you should be prosecuted.
Absolutely. These people emboldened the perpetrators to commit the crimes. It encouraged the perpetrators to continue committing the crimes. They should be prosecuted. They should be held to account. And credit to Rupert Lowe, that's exactly what, as you say, he's looking at now in terms of private prosecution.
Yeah. I hope he, I want to know more of what's going on after this inquiry. What's the next step? I think it's more important than trying to set up a rival political party and getting yourself, lost in the weeds of talking about ethno-nationalism. That to me is not useful at all. It's quite the opposite. I think it's quite detrimental to the cause. But this stuff, looking into these, what's been going on, the systemic failures and negligence is so important. Simon, carry on.
I was just going to say, I spoke to some of the victims whilst I was an MP, Alex, and it's utterly heartbreaking. Yeah. We can only do the right thing by these people.
No, I know. It's so important. This mustn't ever be let to lie. Simon, thank you ever so much. Simon Danchuk. OK, let's speak to some of you after the break, shall we? It'd be nice to have a chinwag, either via the form of message, which I'm going to have to read out, or even better, via telephony, where you can pick up the blower and put in these following digits: 0344 499 1000. Especially you, Mark. It's your normal network rate. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. Write the word talk before you text. You can also send a WhatsApp: 0344 499 1000. Very much looking forward to having a little bit of a back and forth with you just after this.
Join me, Ian Collins, every weekday from 1.
My 12-year-old. Obviously, he won't be 12 then, he'll be 16, but if he's anything like he is now, he shouldn't be anywhere near an election booth. Do you sympathise with him? Is he the victim of the 24-hour news cycle we just spoke of?
I think his failings are internal. He's useless, incompetent, has no political judgment.
Everything you need to know. All the breaking news right here on Talk.
Weekday afternoons from 1 o'clock. Only at the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hey, 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 look at this. These are two potentially new names. Oh, I don't know if I've spoken to either of these guys before. This is very exciting. Who do we start off with? Let us begin with Joseph. Wonderful name, Joseph, who's in Peterborough. Hi, Joseph.
Hello, Alex.
Hi.
I just wanted to talk just about the grooming gangs.
Yes.
A short one. In the Bible, it has a thing called scandals under Matthew and Mark.
Right.
And the scandals deal with children. And it's called an evil. It says, woe to man who harms such as these or causes them to sin. Well, I think it's totally evil.
Yeah.
Nothing else. It's more than grooming. It's a whole evil.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Anybody who can behave in such a depraved, bestial way to children, it's the devil's work. It is wickedness. It is. I struggle to think of anything more wicked than that, quite frankly.
Do you know the biggest tragedy? Is all the authorities that knew it was going on, those who swept it under the carpet. Keir Starmer has been a lawyer, a chief of justice. Where is he coming from?
I don't know. I mean, this is what I mean. It's as a Christian myself, I think, you know, when you are a Christian, you realise that you have a moral authority, and if you see something wicked, you should call it out. If you see, you know, not acting and allowing a wickedness to take place is itself a sin, in my opinion.
Well, it's not only a sin. I think these governments, Tories, Labour, everyone that let it go, even the authority, they all have a lot to answer for.
Yeah.
And they're the ones we should find out why these authorities let it go. And if it's because they didn't want to lose a Muslim vote, I feel even more sorry for them.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. It is utterly deplorable. Joseph, it's been lovely speaking to you, my darling. As our very first chit-chat, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's speak now to Rajat, who is in Harlow. Hi, how are you doing, Rajat?
Yes, hello, Alex. Hello from Harrow. I just wanted to say I'm I'm feeling very, very happy because Donald Trump has just issued another message to Keir Starmer about demanding that please do not give the Diego Garcia and the Chagos archipelago away to Mauritius. This is incredibly good news. And we were wondering if we were still going to get American support because there were mixed messages being sent a few days ago after that. And I think that the government was going to plow ahead with giving it all away. And once again, Trump has intervened and saved the Chagos situation. And it's a kind of boiling away, this story, but I think it's very important because this is like the last foothold that Britain has in the Indian Ocean. France has got lots more colonies than we have from their former empire, but this government has been just incredibly keen to just give everything away for absolutely nothing or minus the taxpayer, like just giving away and saying and giving them money to take it away from us. I think it's been totally crazy. And it's just incredibly good to celebrate that we might still live to see when this dreadful deal is given up by the government.
Do you know, you're absolutely right. And I thought that Peter Barnes put it so well that, you know, people go, oh, Donald Trump's the one risking NATO. Donald Trump, this. No, it's Europe. Europe are terrible. They've been terrible on defence for ages. They've been totally consumed and overindulgent when it comes to woke policy. They've been negligent when it comes to leadership and policy making. And they have basically self-harmed our continent. And thank goodness that Donald Trump is the one looking at Europe now going, oh my goodness. It's amazing, right? It's been over a year since J.D. Vance made the speech at the Munich Security Conference, basically saying your open border situation, your lack of funding in defence. This is really, really bad news. And we want you to sort this out because we believe in you, Europe. We're from you. And then a year later, you've got Marco Rubio saying the exact same thing. And what are Europe doing? Oh, he's going to invade Greenland. He's not going to invade Greenland. He was never going to invade Greenland. He could see the strategic importance of Greenland, right? Yeah. And that's what he was pushing for. The same with the Chagos Islands. Sometimes I think that some of these people in positions of power in our continent actually want to see the destruction of our continent. Are they all in hock with China?
I think so. Especially our government. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. They terrify me. Roger, it's been lovely speaking to you. Do call back again. I love it when I speak to someone new for the very first time. Let's do some messages now. Good evening, Alex. It's Damon from Wigan. I know a family who are on benefits, and since there are 2 young children, the mum and dad, all they do is put a mobile phone or a tablet in their hands. Their social skills are not where they should be at their age. And so now the children have been diagnosed with a problem. And so the parents are getting even more money, mega money. But it's their bad parenting skills that caused this. Yeah, it's interesting, actually. We're not... Very often we don't try and solve situations, do we? We just go, oh, never mind, have another. Yeah, it's. I can see how that would happen. If someone wants to give Chagos Islands away, I'm sure America would take it. Problem solved, says Charlie in Stoke. That's kind of my thinking. I'm like, would the sort of best end result here be America saying to Britain, we will buy those Chagos Islands off you? You know, they wanted Greenland so much. Have these things, please. It would help. Alan from Peterborough says, what I can't forgive Starmer for is giving up his free time to prosecute armed service veterans who were then sent to war by his puppet masters, Tony Blair. I know. If you've chosen in your spare time to go after the military for free, then what does that say about your intentions? Yeah, this is a good one. Why is Jess Phillips the last person to ever say anything about the rape gangs? She's supposed to care about women and girls. I know, where is she? She's silent on the Epstein stuff. Like, honestly, you couldn't have picked a worse person to be the minister for whatever it was, women and girls. I mean, she's just, it's crazy. Now, this is interesting. This is about reform versus Rupert Lowe. I'm so sorry, Alex, to see the appalling verbal abuse you've suffered from Restore supporters online. Let them get on with it. They're little kids. I just look at them and think they're so effing pathetic that they're sitting there going, oh, look at what she said now. I'm going to cut this clip. Oh, look, she's a meme. Ha, ha, ha. You've been mugged. You've been mugged. I don't even know what that means. I'm not a 12-year-old girl. Neither are you. Grow up, some of you. There's absolutely no excuse for intimidation, harassment or vile abuse, regardless of political leanings. Quite. Be an adult. I'm very concerned, this person says, at the nature of such an organisation. And apparently, and I haven't seen this, so I don't know because I don't go on the Reform website that often, but apparently this messenger says that they appear to be infiltrating Reform websites with online pop-ups. I checked the Reform membership ticker today, only to find it's been hijacked by adverts for Restore. I'm afraid such disgraceful antics will only be their own undoing, as reasonable, normal voters amongst us will not tolerate such gutter behaviour. This is, you know, I've been saying to some friends of mine, who I don't think's really seen some of the things that have been circulating online. And I'm not talking about, you know, just the comments underneath where you get a whole load of weirdos with funny names and funny profile pictures saying all sorts of disgusting and deranged things, right? I kind of expect that from all sort of posts. You never know who's infiltrated it. You can't, just because you set up a political movement, you cannot account for who follows you and what they're going to say. But you can when they're coming out to bat for you. If they're coming on as your representatives and then they are the ones doing the trolling online, that's ridiculous. That's really ridiculous. It's very unbecoming, let's say. But no, interesting. I'm tempted now during the advert break to go and look at some reform websites to see what you're talking about. Right. Thank you ever so much for your messages and your calls. Let's keep those coming in, shall we? 03444991000 is the number to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send me a text message. If you're going to do that, write the word talk before you text. And if you want to speak to me a bit later on in the programme, that'd be lovely as well. 03444991000. Matt will take your call, take down your details and give you a call back. OK, you know what to do. It's an advert break. Treat yourself. I'll see you in just a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, cancel culture. Isn't it just ridiculous? Isn't it hateful? Isn't it horrible? It's still going on. I mean, I just don't know how we cancel culture. I don't know where the light at the end of the tunnel is. We're going to be speaking shortly to Dylan Kirk. Now, Dylan Kirk is a very competent, excellent musician. And he was part of the competition show, The Piano, which I've actually watched a few episodes of. This is hosted by Claudia Winkleman, and amateur pianists go to various train stations. You know, it became the trend to put a piano in a train station. So they go to various train stations and perform some of the most incredible music. I mean, I can play the piano badly. And when I see some of the things that these people can do, it just leaves me gobsmacked. They're then judged by seasoned pianist Lang Lang and the pop star Mika. Anyway, Dylan Kirk was part of this show, but then they dropped him. Why? Well, because he attended a demonstration outside a migrant hotel. Let's speak to him now. Dylan, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm very well. How are you taking all of this? Because it's hard, isn't it? When these things happen, when you were just sort of, felled in your prime, pushed out, ostracised for essentially what is a very normal political opinion.
Yeah, it's affected me at home quite a lot, and I'm starting to get a lot of hate on my socials and stuff as well. I've had almost death threats from people, from these humanitarians, as you call them. Only good racist is only good racist is a dead one, being one of them. Things along the line of that. It's affected my income. I'm not getting any more gigs out of it, so yeah.
Gosh, and this would have been, in your mind, potentially going to be the absolute opposite in terms of opportunity. Being able to showcase your incredible skills should have been a huge boost to your career.
Absolutely. I thought it would be, the next best thing to come up for me. I mean, I had 6 gigs cancelled out of an 8-day tour as well beforehand. And I know Channel 4 did ask for some information about stuff before, but, you don't want to keep going on about these things. You want to sort of forget about it and try and move on. But it turns out, this all didn't start from Channel 4. It started from a magazine called Searchlight.
Oh, Searchlight. Oh, yeah, I know Searchlight. Very left-wing.
Yes, still attacking me. Even the individual who I had a photo with basically put a statement out saying, don't attack this guy, blah, 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 blah. And they're still doing it.
Oh, they don't care. They're inhumane. They're utterly relentless, these people. So what happened? So you went to a protest outside one of these migrant hotels and ended up having a picture taken with Paul Golding, who I believe is the leader of Britain First, but you didn't know who he was. You just, he was just some person.
He asked me for the photo as well, because he complimented my style and stuff like that. So he just come up to me, said, "Oh, I like what you're wearing," and he had a photo of me.
Right.
And I mean, whether people believe that or not, it's all I can say. But
this is the thing. There isn't any sort of sensible opportunity for you to make your own case and say, "I didn't know who he was. I'm not associated with him. It's just a photograph." You have every right to join a protest. How did Channel 4? What did they say to you?
So basically, I got a Zoom call with the producers and executive producers, and they called me and said, "We've been made aware of some information that's online about you, which is the Searchlight magazine. And they say we need to think about our next steps and what we need to do, about this." And then cut along to a week later. So I'm at home basically stirring about it. Me and my partner we're worried about, the consequences. And they rang me up to tell me that I wouldn't be participating. So I'm assuming they'd have had to refilm the whole episode.
I mean, when I look at this, Searchlight magazine labels itself as a sort of anti-fascist magazine. It exists to go and find racists and publicly shame them, especially. Set up originally by a former MP of the Labour Party. Essentially, I believe, as an attack dog against the right wing to demonise them. I don't know. But it does seem very, very extreme that they have come after you for all of this.
I mean, I don't use my music as a political platform. I don't go on stage and start ranting about the world and, like we've seen some artists do at the moment, Bob Vylan, Kneecap, etc. But they can get away with it. But, I attended something personally, and then somehow this has ended up all over the place and it's spoiled everything for me. I've worked 10 years to get to where I've got to now, so...
I think it's awful that they don't care. They don't care. They just want to get scalps for their own sick satiation. The BBC shouldn't, I think, be going to Searchlight to decide who is and isn't on their programmes. And they don't care about the collateral damage. They don't care what's going to happen to you and your career, your earning potential. That's it. That you've worked so hard, developed all these incredible skills that you want to share with people. They don't think about these things. They are the bullies. They are the oppressors. Do you have any plans? What you're going to do now? How are you going to take things forward?
Well, I'm not sure at the moment. I mean, I'm just going to try and carry on, and with the support of my fans, I still have a lot of support from people who I've met along the way who are with me on all of this. So I'm going to just keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm willing to fight it against it for as long as I can to prove that I'm innocent.
What sort of music do you play on the Joanna?
I play rock and roll, rockabilly, kind of 1950s style music.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, the funny thing is about them calling me a racist and stuff, like, I love the blues music. I'm massive into my blues music.
Right.
And, I know that where all my music comes from is black rhythm and blues and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm heavily appreciative of that. And I think they fail to understand that I like that sort of stuff. I'm just concerned about something that's illegal at the end of the day.
How might people be able to get in touch with you? There might be people listening to this right now going, gosh, I've got a pub, a hotel, an event, a company, and I'd love to have a talented pianist playing blues and rock and roll and rockabilly. I mean, that would, how can people book you if they're listening to this and thinking that's not okay, and I want to get Dylan back up on his piano again in front of a huge audience? How can they reach you? You there, Dylan, my love? just at the vital moment. We're going to see if we can get him back, because I was thinking then, just as I was listening to that, I was thinking, you know, when I see this happen to people, when their careers have been dustbined by psycho anti-fascists, when people have tried to cancel them, I think we should all club together and elevate them and help them do what they want to do most, do what they love. Dylan, I think we've got you back now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted you to share with everybody, if people were watching this and going, I want to hear him play the piano. I've got a restaurant, I've got a hotel, I've got a pub, I've got a big event, I've got a company, a corporate thing, a wedding. You know, it'd be great to have this guy playing the piano and sharing his amazing skills and entertaining everybody. How can they reach out to you? How can we uncancel you?
So I'm on Facebook. I've got a personal Facebook page and an actual music page. I'm on Instagram as well. So, and I have an email which I can send to them as well.
Excellent. So the best place initially, go on Instagram, go on Facebook, look up Dylan Kirk, DYLANKIRK. You can see it on the screen if you're watching. Go and look him up. And if you want an excellent, top-class pianist, book him. It's time to get Dylan uncancelled. Dylan, thank you ever so much for sharing your story, and best of luck, all strength to your arm. The piano is an amazing instrument, and it's not easy, okay? Because unlike other musical instruments where by and large you are playing just one sort of stream of notes, you're playing on lead guitar, that's your music, on the flute or the violin. Piano, you're basically doing the harmonies, the bass, you're all parts of the orchestra. Every single finger represents a different instrument. And it is so, you know, you have to be extremely ambidextrous, have incredible amounts of rhythm. It's an incredible instrument and extremely difficult to become proficient on. It takes years and years and years. I should know, I started playing the piano at 5 years old. By the age of 18, I'd only got to grade 5. Because I'm rubbish. My brother, however, is a genius. He's the pianist in the family, and I just sort of also had lessons because he is having lessons, and he's gone on to do brilliant things. And I have a keyboard that I occasionally poke, but not very well. So I want you to appreciate how incredible a skill it is. And like I said, go and book Dylan. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now. But then when we come back, again, football, Gaza, all of this nonsense. The way things are all happening is terrifying at such an alarming rate. After the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were blocked from coming to watch their team play Aston Villa, and we all know what happened there. The West Midlands police in cahoots with the community leaders, the Islamists who'd given the chief of police his job, basically being on the board of appointments. How they kowtowed to all of this when they were threatening to go and attack those Jewish fans. Well, it turns out that Ireland will play a home match against Israel at a totally neutral venue. Because what? Israeli fans can't go to Ireland because what will happen to them? I mean, I can't. What's going on? We are really living in sick and dangerous times. We're discussing that after this.
Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, have taken that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. A number of you messaging me about Dylan wanting to know how to download the music, people wanting to buy his album. Evan in Chigwell, who plays the guitar, wants to gig with him. Go on his social media, Dylan Kirk, Facebook, Instagram. Find him, contact him. Let's undo some of the damage these horrible, oppressive, mad leftists do to people. OK, this is a really serious story. The Gardaí, the Irish police, have reported to have raised concerns about policing Israel versus Ireland if it were held in Dublin. Some figures in government have suggested it's likely the Republic of Ireland's home fixture against Israel, scheduled for the 4th of October, will be played at a neutral venue outside of the country. The government's position is that the game is a matter for the FAI. I'm assuming that's the Football Association of Ireland or some similar interpretation of the acronym. They're both the Taoiseach and his deputy said over the weekend they believe the fixture should go ahead, but two people with knowledge of the issue who spoke on condition of anonymity said they expected that the game would go ahead at a neutral venue, but no decision has been made. Let's speak now to our very own Phil Dave. How you doing, Phil?
Alex, yes, I'm all right. It's all the others. What can I tell you? Gracious me, this is just absolutely extraordinary.
Dean said to me that you've got a really cool background, which makes it look like you're actually in the studio, and you do. That's genius.
I'm very sorry. I'm being actually sort of quite lazy this evening. I am broadcasting from home, but yes, you're quite right. I have sort of tried to disguise the fact and make it look like I'm in the studio. But thank you for giving away the trade secret.
Yeah, but that's so cool. I'm kind of jealous. I want this now. I want to sort of do up my house like a talk studio. And
no, you need the moving background. You're sat in presenter's chair, so you need the. I've got the guest background, haven't I?
No, yeah, exactly. Oh my God! I've just looked over here at this. Guys, can you do us the three-way split screen and you can show the empty chair where Phil Dave isn't to actually demonstrate how Phil's background is basically look. It's not lit up. Oh my gosh!
Well, there you go.
Put your head down, Phil, a sec. Bend down. Look at that! That's crazy!
There you go.
I've never seen anything like it, Phil. I don't know whether I'm amazed and impressed by this or disturbed, quite frankly.
It's almost like I'm in charge of the visual operations there, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, that's true, actually.
Look, do you know, I have to say, I also think, whilst we are sort of on a slightly lighter point, just before we get into the serious stuff, how unfair is it of you and producer Dean to make me go on after Dylan with his amazing hairdo? That's not fair.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry about that. But I've seen photographs of hair when you had it, and you used to have some pretty choice styles.
It used to be there, but
yourself.
never mind.
You used to have a Mohican at one point, didn't you?
It wasn't far off. It was more of a box cut, but yes, it was similar. But anyway, if you can imagine it. Sorry, I know if you're listening on radio, this is really not interesting. I'm very sorry.
I was going to say, that is karma. That's why you're bald now, because you didn't use your hair responsibly when you had it.
You're very true. You're very right.
Let's talk about this. It's good to have a little laugh and a joke, because
but after reading this, you've got to laugh or else you cry, to be honest.
I mean... I always say in the modern age how easy it is that we become desensitised so quickly to stuff, so quickly. And ever since, you know, the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans couldn't come to Birmingham, we now are finding out that a big international fixture between Ireland and Israel won't necessarily be played in Ireland because the police are worried about policing it. This is the direct result of, and let's go all the way up the chain, the pro-Pally marches and the extremists and the anti-Semites, which is largely being funded, corralled and coordinated by terrorist organisations who have connections to the hostile state of Iran. This is how much of a mess we're in. This isn't just, oh, well, you know, some people feel a bit strongly about kids in Gaza, so this year let's just not play the match here in case there's some demonstrators. This is altogether far more sick and sinister.
Oh, totally and utterly, and I still cannot get my head around how stupid people are, genuinely. You know, why do they sort of look at this really sort of tiny part of the bigger picture and say, ooh, I don't like the look of that, therefore I'm outraged. But you don't really know what you're outraged about, because the truth is you step back a couple of paces and then, as you so eloquently and brilliantly put, you put the dots and join it all together and you realise that this is all just an attempt by the Iranian regime to delegitimize the state of Israel and subsequently to go after Jewish people the world over. It's just ridiculous. How stupid do people have to be? And as far as I'm concerned, as much as I think anyone with half a brain could say, I don't want anyone truly innocent to die. No one wants anyone truly innocent to die. Get that completely. But think about how it's come about. And has it really got anything to do with football?
It really hasn't. I genuinely used to think, Phil, when you read back about history, and of course we all studied the Second World War, X, Y, Z, when we were at school, we all know what happened. And I used to think, how? Knowing Germans and Germany today, a modern, progressive, Western society, you ask yourself, how did people get radicalized like they did? I just thought it seemed impossible. I could never wrap my head around how so many people went along with evil. And then I am looking at what's going on almost 100 years later in this country, across Europe now, and I'm like, this is happening again. And there are too many people just going along with extremism, right? We can all have robust debates about geopolitics, about wars, about culture, about immigration, but the levels of extremism now snowballing on the left and the right is truly terrifying.
I think the main reason why this is slightly obviously different to the 30s, yes, you're right, it amounts to the same thing, which is ultimately anti-Jewish hatred, but the main reason why this is so different is obviously in the 1930s, the way they spread propaganda was with the assistance of various publications. There's one or two publications in this day and age that are doing a marvellous job of it, but luckily the vast majority see right through it, or they just don't bother with it at all. But if you were to look now at the effect that social media is having by spreading this nonsense, that's where the true problem lies. And I've always been really surprised by, given that Israel, I'm genuinely not just saying, it really is the forefront of technology in this day and age. Years ago, it absolutely used to be Japan. I would argue now it is Israel. And people don't even realize that, how good they are when it comes to tech. But I'm so surprised that in a country that is so good with technology, that they've never managed to do anything to actually automatically remove this nonsense from the online world. So that's obviously the biggest difference, is the way that the information is spread. And the other reason why this is very different in this day and age is because it can't possibly be people of an Islamic background who are causing all of this problem, because of course in Nazi Germany it was the white supremacists, it was the Christian Aryan race, if you like, who decided that they wanted just one supreme white race in the whole of Europe. So, of course, those two factors mean that history can't possibly be repeating itself, but it is.
It is repeating itself, and I just don't understand why, with these huge things happening, we're being told that actually the things we need to be concerned about is pronouns, or reform UK. Do you know what I mean? It's terrifying.
I actually had a bit of a debacle with a colleague literally today about pronouns for, in inverted commas, misgendering someone, and I said, you just can't argue with biology. Whatever you want to say, you just can't argue with biology. It's just as simple as that. And so, I would sort of say that if we are going to focus on that, or what toilet someone should be using, then it's not really a wonder the Western world is going to hell in a handcart. But as far as this is concerned with Ireland, and the idea that somehow the Irish police are incapable of policing a football match, well, I put it to you that actually this is probably no difference to policing any other football match, because the vast majority of people, funnily enough, don't give a hoot about what goes on in the Middle East. In this country, in Ireland, most people the world over do not care about the Middle East. And so what they're actually doing is they're saying that we are so scared by a minority group of people, and I'm not just talking about radical Islam here, I'm not talking about the fundamentalists here, but I'm actually talking about an even smaller portion of people than that, because there would only be in the real world a handful of people who would be that outraged that they would lead on to some sort of violent behaviour or some sort of disturbance as a result of it. And the way I look at it is, if they're that worried, load up the rubber bullets, you know what I mean? Sorry. Like, I'm sorry, but it's true. You know, that is your job. You are there to police. And if you have to do it through intimidation, do it through intimidation.
Didn't like the London mayor at one point, or one of them, I don't know if it's Boris or Sadiq, bought some sort of weird armoured riots van for London. I've never seen that thing rolled out.
Boris, I think, brought in water cannons at one stage.
That's right, and then had to get rid of them again. I know where they ended up.
There was so much backlash, they had to remove the water cannons because it was against human rights.
And I know where they ended up. When I was living and working in Kenya, the Kenyan government bought them.
Brilliant.
And then when there was sort of all this post-election madness, I saw those water cannons being used. I was like, oh, there they are. No, it's craziness. It's craziness. Phil, thank you ever so much, and kudos on the home studio. That is absolutely genius. Can you come over to Gloucestershire and do mine?
It's an amount of pleasure. Besides, we need to go for a cider or two in Gloucestershire, so you tell me when.
Oh, hell yes. I'll be booking you in. Phil, thank you ever so much. Right, let's do some more of your messages to inspire you, to titillate you into doing the same. I want to read this. This is really quite sad. This is Jane. I was a foster carer specialising in teenage girls. I took an emergency one night of a 12-year-old. Her family had put her in care because they couldn't keep her safe. The first night she slept all night, no problem. The second, 2 men turned up at our house, waited in their car. She ran out, got in their car and disappeared. I reported her missing as procedure. The police brought her back at 3 a.m. I took her phone off her, as this was how she contacted these men. She complained to the police. I was forced to give the phone back. The police sat with her for half an hour, then left. No sooner had they left, the men were back, and she legged it out the door. I never saw her again. I blame the woke coppers who let her have her phone so those men could contact her. And lots of people still messaging about brilliant Dylan. Hi team, just tune back in. He's too good. Screw him. Rock on, buddy, says David. There you go, Dylan. I've just found Dylan Kirk and the Killers on iTunes. They're blimmin' good. Very bluesy rock and roll, worth a listen. I'm going to support him by buying his music. Richard in Kettering. Leo Curse is up next. Don't go anywhere.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
All right, hello. We now need to sort of not only not only do we need to cheer ourselves up, but we've got to, be serious, investigate all the news, and somehow keep ourselves sane, don't we? So that is what we're going to be doing for the next half hour. And I can't think of anyone better. We've hand-selected some stories to chew over, and it's all going to go in wild directions because that's how we roll. And I can't think of anyone better to speak to right now, who I think is probably the funniest man in Britain. He's so quick-witted. He's so hilarious. I love the bones of him. It's the brilliant Leo Curse. Hey,
Alex, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm getting jealous of everybody's at-home studios. That's really good soundproofing behind you. Could I just say?
It's only 25 quid a panel off the internet. You just stick it on. It's amazing.
That's it. I can't even hang a picture, Leo. This is my problem. If you see my house, I've got all these, I've got drills, I've got all the wall plugs, I've got screws. I do know, I keep thinking I should be able to drill a hole in a wall. It's not that difficult. You get your drill bit, put the hole in, make sure that the wall plug and the screw are the same size, and off you go. But for some reason, I dare not do it because I'd probably end up drilling out an eyeball because I'm useless.
That's what men are for, Alex. I bet there's a ton of men in your village who are just waiting to hammer a nail into your wall.
Oh, if only. That almost got a bit risque there, Leo. Of course, all of these risque men lurking around my village, sexually harassing me, white Anglo-Saxons. I say that because this is ridiculous. A TfL advert has been banned for stereotyping black men. So I'm like, okay, what was this advert about? What's going on here? It showed a black man harassing a white woman. One person complained. One person complained. There was all these other adverts of a white man harassing another white man. Even this black man in the advert harassing a white woman had his white friend coming to sit next to her to box her in. One person complained that it reinforces stereotypes, negative stereotypes against teenage black men, and it's banned. I mean, is it the fact now that only white people can commit crime?
We've seen this. We've seen this for several years now. I think it started around the same time as George Floyd. There can only be, if you've got an advert for something negative like gambling or alcoholism or domestic abuse or whatever it is, or in this case sexual harassment on public transport, only white men are allowed by law to be in that advert. And this time they had some white men doing the harassment and doing the aggression as well, and they decided to put one single solitary black man in there just to provide some diversity. I thought that's what we're all about these days, a bit of diversity. But no, the Advertising Standards Authority decided in their infinite wisdom that no, we cannot have any diversity in adverts. Every single other advert, you know what I mean? You'd think you're in some weird Chinese Papua New Guinea crossover world, but no, every other advert has to be as diverse as possible. We're not in a land of where any white people have ever set foot. But this particular advert, because it was about something negative, by law apparently has to show a white guy doing the bad thing. It's such a nonsense. And the fact that they did it because just one person complained. Do you know what this is going to mean? For all those meddlers and annoying people, everybody now knows they just need one complaint. So everybody's going to be complaining about everything. It's going to be carnage out there.
It is absolutely ridiculous, and it sort of makes me think of that two things. First of all, I think of that ridiculous Sadiq Khan little project with those billboards and those adverts with people going, mate, if your friend's making disparaging remarks about women, just say mate, and then they suddenly become Me Too movement feminists. It's crazy. And I remember watching that, and it was as per usual, like it always is, a sort of young black woman going about her daily life and a load of white men pouncing on her and trying to ruin it. And it's just like, this is so ridiculous. And it also reminds me of that crazy psyop adolescence, when we all know that there's a huge issue going on with men from misogynistic cultures in the Middle East and the Maghreb coming along and trying to snatch up women and girls. And instead of going, right, okay, perhaps we shouldn't be taking these men from countries where they stone women and make them dress like ghosts, instead they do this portrayal of a perfectly nice white guy, young kid from what looks like a very lovely family, going around stabbing a girl up. And it is based on a true story. And in the true story, in reality, the person who did get radicalised by the Andrew Tate incel brigade and did end up stabbing a girl was black. But no, we've got to be told all the time that it's young white boys going around who are the danger to women, and it's just an inversion of the truth.
And it's enforced by authorities. I mean, credit to TfL here, credit to Sadiq Khan, although I doubt he had any actual creative input in this advert, but credit to them for actually showing that, you know, a variety of people can commit these sorts of sexual harassments or aggressions on public transport. It's not just the white guys that you see in Adolescence or, you know, any other portrayal. They put a diverse cast in there. And they were slapped down by what the Advertising Standards Authority. Why are they're supposed to like be checking and making sure that, you know, fish fingers, you get the right number in a pack and stuff. They're not supposed to be making these sort of, you know, moral, cultural, societal, you know, they're not the arbiters of who we get to see on screen and how things are represented. Because believe it or not, I mean, this might shock some people at the Advertising Standards Authority, but there have occasionally been men of colour who've been sexually aggressive to women. In fact, some of my female friends say that, you know, some of them are more sexually aggressive than your bog standard white Brit who has to be in all the bad adverts. You know, so maybe we could have a bit of diversity in those places as well, instead of just in Bridgerton or when we're showing Joan of Arc or some other historical person. Isaac Newton was portrayed as a black man, but like somebody hassling someone on a bus isn't portrayed. Like it just, you know, like let's just have a bit of common sense and a bit of parity here.
Do you remember that whole hubbub around Adolescence? Did you ever watch it? I watched it, and it was okay. It was quite a decent series, I suppose. But then it was mad when it's just being discussed on all the sort of chit-chat shows, all the political programmes. And there were even, like, people talking about, you know, the presenter would say to politicians, have you watched Adolescence? Have you watched Adolescence? As if that's the most important things in an MP's portfolio, to sit down and watch some rubbish on Netflix. And then people are like, no, I haven't watched the documentary. It's not a documentary. People just went mental. What was that?
I know. I never watched it because I just assumed that at some point I'm going to be handcuffed and led into a bunker and forced to watch it, like in Clockwork Orange. You know what I mean? So you know, I'll just catch up on it then. You know, when the state apparatchiks, you know, put their fists on my throat and force me to face the screen.
I know, it did feel like that. It actually did feel like if you haven't watched this, you might get arrested. It's like, oh, for crying out loud, what is going on? Pubs in London.
It's weird that it's the same.
Yeah,
it's the same people that were ignoring the grooming gangs or minimising the grooming gangs that were saying that, oh, Adolescence is absolutely the most shocking and realistic portrayal of you know, any sexual harassment or sexual crime by men against women in Britain. And it just shows everything that we see is like social engineering. Everything's been tweaked and has to fit with the, you know, these diversity tick box regulations and things that are handed down from government agencies like the Advertising Standards Authority. Everything has to have this message. If it doesn't fall lockstep in line with that message, then it gets canned, like this advert was.
Oh, it's absolute craziness. I'm absolutely exhausted, but I'm fed up of, you know, when I turn on my TV and, you know, I'm watching, say, whatever channel it is, and I see all the adverts, I literally don't see any white people in them anymore. And it's just so... I remember that this is... I'm going to be politically incorrect because hey-ho. But when I remember looking for dresses when I was in my previous job at the channel we don't mention, and looking online and trying to sort of, you know, pick what dress might look good on me on the you know, company's website, and the model was this sort of very tall, Sudanese-looking, very elegant, very slender, very, very dark African woman. And I looked at it and I couldn't visualise what that dress would look like on me. I thought to myself, I actually don't know. I can't tell because her body shape is massively different to mine. Her skin tone is massively different to mine. And as a result, I didn't buy the dress. Now, that wasn't me being racist, but the way that we operate as human beings when we're making choices on products we want to buy and things we want to eat, and, you know, we look at someone tucking into something succulent on the screen or wearing something or buying an aftershave, and it's supposed to be aspirational. And so I understand why we need a bit of diversity. You can't just have everybody being white in adverts. But when you have no white people in adverts, it can't be very good for the companies paying for that marketing.
Yeah, but do they even care? I mean, the thing about, you know, having these sort of, I mean, they call it diversity. I don't know why they call it diversity, because it's so homogeneic and it's so unrepresentative of what our demographics are at the moment. Maybe in 20 years' time, we'll be a mainly Sudanese country. But the reason they do it is so that they can tick those boxes on the form, so they're eligible for ESG funding. So if you've got these big investment companies like BlackRock, like Vanguard, and to actually get the loans from them and to get them at a preferential rate, you've got to show that you're doing something socially progressive. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's making sure that people want to make sure that their money's doing good. And of course, in the course of trying to do good, they end up making everything ridiculous and awful. But these companies know they can access funding if they tick these boxes. So they have, they sponsor a pride parade, and they have, rainbow lanyards at work, and they have, all Sudanese models in their lineup, and then they can say, oh, look how much diversity we're doing. But of course, you apply that to every single organization, and all of a sudden, it just looks silly. Like it doesn't represent what's actually going on at home. And also it kind of, I don't know, them banning banning the advert with the black guy, it almost draws more attention to it. Yeah. It's almost as if people can see that are people upset because they've this advert's landed on a truth and that's why it has to be banned? It raises those questions in people's minds.
I mean, the other jokes are when you're sort of going about on the London Underground, and I don't know if they're still, they haven't seen them for a while, but there used to be all these sort of adverts going, don't stare, writing at the top of the carriage, don't go about staring at people, staring's bad, don't do this, don't do that. And I was like, yeah, the starers probably can't read English.
Yeah. And also, like, you get told that if you stare at a woman, then that's sexual harassment. But if you make insufficient eye contact with somebody that's a different ethnicity from you, then that's racist. So to make sure you don't commit some sort of microaggression, you got to stand with your eyes swiveling in different directions all the time, just to make sure you're not making too much eye contact or too little eye contact. It's, I think we should just throw some of this stuff out the window.
Oh, I love it. Do you think we need like eye alarms then? Like, sort of smart watches that will go bleep if you've looked at someone for more than 2 seconds, or bleep if you've looked at them for under 1 second. Or maybe we'll just buy all those VR headsets and, become the slaves of the .com bros, because that seems to be where we're going to end up. It's freaky. Right, don't go anywhere, Leo. Let's have a little break. Get yourself a drink, son, and we're going to catch up with some fun just after this. Every Monday to Wednesday, midnight until 1, it is Talkback.
Such a shortage of housing. You've got landlords, right, are taking that on board, and it's an absolute disgrace.
Your stories, your opinions, it is your chance to have your say. So they're literally just being rented out as hotels, basically.
Yeah, rent a load of hotels.
Well, that has really shone a light for me.
Across the UK, on DAB+, On your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, right, come on, guys, let's get weird. So first of all, I want to share with you that Darren in Basildon says, evening, Alex and Leo, live weird hour. I know you covered it last night, but this came up on my LinkedIn feed today. It's a man playing taxidermied goat bagpipes. It's literally a dead goat with some, like, tubes coming out of it, and the man is playing it, 450 quid, and it says, do not leave in direct sunlight, no time wasters. What is that? That is the craziest thing I've absolutely ever seen. And then this message, so I'm going to ask Leo about whether he's got any dark, sinister skills. But Mark's message is going, we're a little late to the party, but the other day you told of your skill at mentioning a celebrity name, saying that they would die, then they did. Well, it wasn't quite that simple. I didn't just go, you know, Sadiq can't die, and then the next day he dies. No, just a few weird coincidences, which are a bit odd. And then he said, I used to do something similar, he confesses. I would mention a name in passing, then they would die shortly after that. It used to freak me out. It happened numerous times. We've both got the accidental killing habit, it seems. Two weird events I remember, and these are brilliant. One was saying to a friend, I wonder who would take over presenting This Is Your Life if Eamon Andrews ever left the show. I bet it would be Michael Aspel. 2 days later, Eamon Andrews died, and Michael Aspel was the new presenter of This Is Your Life. And then the other one, I found an old episode of a TV series called Shades of Darkness. I thought I'd watched the first episode. In the episode, June Brown, who later on starred as Dot Cotton in EastEnders, played a ghost who would appear to people but never speak. It was the only episode of the anthology series June was in. The very next day, June Brown died. Wow. Have you ever accidentally killed someone, Leo?
I've never accidentally killed someone. I might have deliberately killed people, but you know, that's between me and my lawyer.
It's just, I seriously went through this phase of I would be sort of saying, oh gosh, that person don't look very well. And then literally bad things would come about. So I kind of have to be very careful now commenting on people's health when they're in the public eye.
And you know, a couple of 100 years ago, you'd be up for a dunking. You'd be getting burnt or thrown off a cliff because you've got the evil eye.
I am so witchy. You know, I love my cats. I'm sort of, you know, I'm the witchiest person I can think of, quite frankly. I would, they would try and drown me, but guess what? I'd float. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. So a Scottish lesbian group have gone after Olivia Colman. Because she's like, oh my God, a celebrity's still doing this. She's turned around and said that she's a gay man and in her marriage to Ed Sinclair, and that she feels non-binary. I mean, it was Eddie Izzard who first started this by saying, actually, I think I'm a lesbian. And all of a sudden, this sort of weird habit of celebrities having to, like, jump on the, you know, the weird alphabet wagon, for want of a better word.
Yeah, and also it's like, she's about 10 years out of date. This was like, you know, celebrities were getting praised and patted on the back for absolutely made-up nonsense that means nothing. About around this 10 years ago, you know, somebody would be incredibly brave for coming out as non-binary. Sam Smith would be sitting on the couch this morning like 12 kilos of sausages, sitting there being like, oh, I'm actually I'm going to be a fisher them, or whatever it is, you know. Like this was a fad that, you know, we went through for a few years, and everybody was like, what on earth is this? It was like double denim in the 80s. I remember double denim. I remember having a mullet in the 80s when I was about 14 years old. You know what? I grew my mullet out and I changed my double denim, so I don't still wear it. I don't know what those people who had their penises removed are going to do. Like if you went all in on the gender woo-woo cult, I mean, you know, it's pretty tough coming back from that. And, you know, I feel sorry for the people who do want to, you know, we've got growing numbers of detransitioners. But yeah, it just shows these people like Olivia Colman, they're living in isolated bubbles. Nobody cares about, there's, you know, cost of living crisis. Nobody cares about pronouns and stuff like that anymore. People are too busy trying to get on with their lives. And she's flouncing around being like, oh, I think I'm a gay man, actually. Well, no, you're not actually. And you don't just get to be a man. Remember what Bob Dylan said? How many roads does a man have to walk down before he becomes a man? Not everybody who's even male gets to be a man, Olivia, and you definitely don't get to be a man because you've got a vagina.
Olivia Colman irritates me, I must admit. I liked her at the beginning, and then she seemed to play every single part in every single TV program, every single film. But every part she plays, she's still Olivia Colman. You know, she's like one of those people that doesn't really get out of the character of herself. But the other thing is
she's been great. She's been great in some things like Peep Show. Absolutely fantastic, so funny. Also, there's an amazing film shot in really wide angle where she played a queen.
Yeah, the crazy queen. She was actually good in that. Yeah.
Yeah, she's brilliant. I wish these actors would stick to their craft. You know, nobody cares what an actor has to say about, you know, pronouns or politics. I mean, I guess, you know, I can't blame her. Somebody's turned up on her doorstep wanting to do an interview for the Sunday Times or whatever, so she's got to come up with something. You know what I mean? She can't just be like, oh, I like watching Antiques Roadshow and bacon muffins. She's got to come up with something. But, you know, I don't know, get the actors and actresses, all they do is put a hat on and do a silly accent and pretend to be a person and read out some lines that somebody else wrote. I've been an actor. I played Mick Fleetwood in an ITV drama. And all I did, I put on Mick Fleetwood's clothes that somebody else picked out for me. I got styled like Mick Fleetwood, and then I pretended I was Mick Fleetwood. It gave me no insight into geopolitics or gender ideology whatsoever.
This is the thing, and the mad thing about all this LGBTQ plus stuff is now we're seeing the rise of it. So it's quite a serious subject, but let's just make it funny anyway. We're seeing the rise of what I'm going to call the alphabet assassins. Have you noticed this theme now of so many sort of shooter types being trans?
Yeah, especially in the last week, there was the horrific shooting in Canada. Yeah. Where a trans woman, so a bloke basically, shot up a school, and I think killed his own family as well.
And then there was the other one at the sports event. Was it an ice hockey event or a hockey event?
Ice hockey, yeah.
Yeah, and again, a man who's sort of transitioned, going shooting things up. There was also the guy who assassinated Charlie Kirk. He was sort of in with the alphabet people. And I'm like, what?
Definitely non-binary. For those people, you can't have normal pronouns. You know what I mean? That'd be like turning up to a Greenpeace meeting in a V8. If you're just he/him, they're going to be disgusted. Of course, you got to have some fancy, you know, Z or whatever, or you know, go the whole hog, be a she/they. But yeah, I mean, there's a definite pattern here, because we've got to remember that transgender people are still, you know, a small proportion of society, and there's genuine transgender people out there. Not having a go at them. I'm having a go at all these, you know, the new ones, these weirdos who've sort of latched onto it. Yeah. And there's clearly danger in this cult, because transgender people are constantly told by the media, by everyone, that they're persecuted, that, you know, that there's a literal trans genocide going on, that they're being attacked by Trump, they're being attacked by Reform or whoever. And that's a dangerous message. When you tell people that they're uniquely victimized, you know, psychologically, that's going to make them, that's going to mean that they feel justified in exacting violence against the people.
They're constantly being told. First of all, they're sort of like, you know, they get involved online, they're going down the wormholes, they start thinking they're in the wrong body. They then are being told, oh, well, people want to kill you because you're trans. You're in the wrong body. You're also being persecuted. The right wing are going to come after you because they're all neo-Nazis. They're going to, you know, they're fascistic. They're going to lock you up. The trans people are most persecuted in the world. And they're like, here, have a bucket load of hormones. Let's see what happens next. It's like, come on. They're basically like, you know, these sort of mad cultish types. And there are people with genuine gender dysphoria. But there are a lot of people, like you said, who are basically being turned into killer cyborgs.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to put it. Yeah, people go down wormholes, and that's what you get after you've had the operation. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely some self-examination needs to happen in the whole gender woo-woo cult, because we see it over and over again. At places like the Green Party conference, you know, they say things like, you know, transgender people are the most marginalised, the most victimised in society. That is such a dangerous message to send out. Yeah, especially when you say, like, when you're then pumping testosterone or whatever hormones into people that, you know, can then have huge mood imbalances. And also, like, if there's guys dressed as Hitler going around committing these atrocities, and it kept happening week after week, people would be like, well, what's going on with this cult of guys dressed as Hitler? How come they get a pass if they're dressed like Barbara Cartland? Like, if they chuck a frock on, everybody's like tiptoeing around on screen. The police officers are tiptoeing around trying to get the pronouns right, as if that's the priority.
It's crazy. Like, anyone who's ever lived with a woman knows that once a month they go a bit mad because of all the hormones raging around their bodies. What you don't want to do is multiply that surge times about 1,000, give it to someone on a daily basis for 3 months while telling them people are trying to kill them. I mean, what do you think is going to happen? It's crazy. I think people are beginning to talk about it now, the alphabet assassins. I honestly think we actually do need, this is making fun of it now, but it's blimmin' serious.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's, especially when you consider what a small proportion of the population trans people are. To have 2 in a week, and of course before then there were some big cases. There was the Catholic school, and was it Texas or Utah that was shot up? There's been various other school shootings also, done by the alphabet assassins.
I hope I'm going to popularise that. You can use it, Leo. Take that one with you. That's my little gift to you for coming on the programme tonight. I love you, Leo. Thank you ever so much. You've really brightened the end of my evening. Isn't he great, ladies and gentlemen? The fantastic Leo Curse. Right, let's do some of your messages before we kick off with it. We're getting back serious after the breaks. That was your little bit of weird there. After the break, we're going to be talking about Iran because things are really heating up. It's funny, in that post that Donald Trump put on Truth Social all about Chagos, talking about we're going to need those to put our bombers on there, we're going to need those islands, going to need Diego Garcia and Fairford. I can tell you, as someone who lives not too far, actually I didn't hear anything, my mum messaged me because she lives half an hour down the road and she's like, have you heard all the stuff coming out? There's some big planes going over, it must be the American bombers. Very exciting. So that's kind of dark, but I find it exciting when I see big military aircraft in the sky because it's just cool, isn't it? Evening, Alex. I'm very concerned by the rise in anti-Semitism, not only by the hard left, but also by some elements of the Restore Britain movement, Ashton says, talking about Jews not being British. Restore claims to be patriots, but how is it patriotic to support an ideology that our ancestors died whilst fighting? Again, look, if people are making comments under posts, you can't control those. You can't control someone says, I love Alex Phillips and I really hate the Welsh or something like that. If someone said that, it's not, I didn't tell them to say it. I don't control what they think or feel. But, like it is, the extremes are rising now on both sides of the political spectrum. And, look, here's Terry saying, Alex, they're talking about Dylan Kirk. He's a young guy. Aren't you going to shout at him like you did to young Bob? Terry, if you'd watched the interview yesterday, I have a feeling you probably didn't. I didn't shout at all. I quietly just said, please, can you explain yourself? And I said to him, look, I'm worried. You're a young guy. If you get sort of, stuck in talking about, all this stuff, which maybe we need to have a conversation about it, maybe not, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but I'm like, you've got the rest of your life ahead of you. And we live in a very unforgiving country and culture. I think I was quite compassionate and nice. But I did notice, though, online that some of those followers of that particular movement saying, you all know where she is, bombard with messages, go find her, hunt her down. So, grow up, you bullies. Alex, you and Leo are so right about advertising. Have you noticed how well-known clothes shops display photographs of models who are absolutely nothing like their customers and not even the same age? I'll tell you what, though, what's happened, there's sort of another thing that's now happened on TfL advertising, is you have to walk past adverts with a really sort of massive, obese woman with hairy armpits going like, yeah, I'm an individual, celebrate me. I'm like, I don't need to see that at 8 o'clock in the morning, please. Good old Becca. We love you, Becca. Says, I play the death game with my family every Xmas. I started it. You have to choose 3 famous people that will die within a year. It literally took 15 months for a winner. Unfortunately, it was James Whale, but we toasted to him. If James is listening to this from the great studio in the sky, he will laugh heartily at that, I'm sure. I miss that man. He really was the one who really gave me my first broadcast break, He's an amazing human. Oh, he's lovely. Right, OK. On that note, keep your thoughts coming in. We've only got half an hour left. 03444991000 is the number to call. 87222 if you want to send me a text like the word talk before you text. 03444991000 to also send a WhatsApp. OK, go and have a little breather and join me just after, because we're going to be asking how close to war America is with Iran.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh my goodness, a friend has just sent me a tweet that he's put online. It's a photograph of a man, and he's sitting on a tube carriage, and he's got a big blanket over his head like this. I was just on the Victoria line, and the man sitting next to me was literally smoking crack cocaine under a blanket. I saw the pipe, the lighter, and then he started aggressively tweaking out right there. I don't know what tweaking out means, but I assume it means, I don't know, because I don't know the lingo. That's crazy. I literally am looking at this photo of a man with a blanket over his head smoking crack on the tube. Oh, great. That's what we've become in the United Kingdom. I mean, I've heard of horror stories like that happening on the New York Metro, but the Underground used to be relatively sane. Not anymore. Talking about America. We're now joined by the brilliant Matt Bielinski, attorney and host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. How are you doing, Matt?
Doing great.
Great to have you back on the show. America, Iran. Trump's moving his warships closer. Iran's basically, threatening to sink those warships. This story is sort of coming up to the surface and going back down, coming up to the surface, going back down. At one point, it seemed to me that America was poised to strike Iran, that Trump had actually come out and said, if you hurt a single hair on anyone's head, you will feel the full force of America's military might. Then Iran did this horrendous, bloodthirsty, vile, sadistic crackdown against protesters. Nothing happened. It then seemed to me we're in, trying to have a dialogue. Iran, can you stop making missiles and enriching uranium? Iran saying, well, no. What do you think is going to happen?
It's really tough to say at this point because, as you said, this situation has fluctuated. And you have these two very directly competing dynamics, one of which Donald Trump wants to present himself as the anti-war president, keeping us out of quote-unquote stupid wars. And he very much, got a lot of the base of his support is with that picture of him in mind. Contrast that with the other way that he operates in international affairs, that there must be consequences to challenging him and challenging America. And the Iranian spokespeople and members of the military don't, seem to be goading him in that regard. And a lot of tough talk. Hey, Trump, no matter how many warships you have in the Middle East, there's nothing that you can do. America is feckless in this regard. Donald Trump has not been non-reactive to that type of provocation and tough talk from opponents and hostile, and strategic enemies thus far. So it seems like at some point, push is going to come to shove, and we're going to have to find out which Trump we're getting: the anti-war, no stupid wars, somewhat pacifist Trump, or the there must be consequences to anyone opposing me Trump.
It was suggested to me that initially when America started positioning aircraft carriers, warships in the area, that Israel had said to America, oh gosh, if you strike, they're going to strike us, and that put the guardrails up against any sort of offensive. But then it's sort of been suggested to me, actually, no, this is all about the element of surprise, because it seems to me a lot of assets have been moved into the region. You don't do that unless you're prepared to use them. But also you don't say to your enemies, they're not going to do a blitzkrieg on Tehran. I'm sure that they will be striking military bases. They'll be using the bunker buster bombs to go after the underground nuclear facilities. They might be trying to take out some of the key figures, the Ayatollah and his cohorts. I don't know. But certainly if you're planning to do that, you don't exactly tell the world when and where.
In one regard, yes, and Trump has mentioned the elements of surprise in his various commentary around his approach to military affairs. On the other hand, he also is a fan of symbolism and showings of strength, and some of his message to America's enemies that it doesn't matter whether or not we have the element of surprise. There's nothing that you can do about it because our arsenal is just that powerful. And during the first round of military hostilities in the Middle East in 2025, when there was a missile back and forth between Israel and Iran and the United States, people call it the 12-day war, if you could even call it that. The United States and Israel did strike Iran. There were certainly there was no mystery about it. There was even communications to other strategic parties in the region that, hey, we are going to do this. And then they went ahead and did it, and Iran was unable to stop them. So to a certain extent, I do believe that Trump is taking the approach of, it doesn't really matter whether or not we tell you what we're going to do. You can't stop us because your defenses are not that strong, and our $800 billion a year military is just that capable.
But it seems to me that Iran's now calling his bluff. They've been, playing games in the Strait of Hormuz, as they like to do, which is one of the main arterial shipping routes, where I think it's a fifth of the world's oil supply goes down that. So, when we need to keep our lights on in Britain and having to buy oil from the Qataris, well, it's got to get to us. It gets to us on the back of tankers, which is why the arterial routes of maritime transport are so vitally important. And Iran's been closing parts of it off, conducting military exercises. At one point, of course, they were sending a lot of missiles and drones to their mates in the Yemen, the Houthi rebels, to try and attack cargo ships. It seems to me Iran is sort of, I don't know, like you were saying it earlier, sort of almost mocking Trump, saying, come on then.
No doubt. I don't think they're almost. I think they absolutely are. If you're taking the public pronouncements of Iranian military personnel, and you mentioned the Houthis, which is interesting because Iran may be overlearning the lessons of some of the Houthis. I don't want to say success, but durability in attacking American and Western interests in key transport regions, and that the Houthis did undergo or sustain a really significant bombing campaign against them, and were not necessarily knocked out or prevented from causing trouble in that region and disrupting shipping and transport lanes there. However, the Houthis are a bit of an independent group there. They don't have necessarily the same risk points and strategic concerns that the Iranians do, and that the Houthis, if you happen to kill certain members of their leadership, that doesn't necessarily prevent them from engaging in terrorist activities. But the Iranians are a regime that run a country and want to remain in power and continue to run a country. And you take out or threaten or put at risk a couple of members of that administration, and all of a sudden their power, particularly with the civil unrest from the aggrieved members of Iranian society over the past couple of months, put that administration at a lot more peril.
Is there, finally, potentially a risk that Iran might have more might than we believe? Or, is there knowledge that they might have developed a catastrophic weapon? They've certainly been for a long time developing drone technology and missiles and long-range missiles, hypersonic missiles. Is there a risk that actually it could be assumed that Iran has a capability that before they didn't, which is why there's this posturing but no action?
You'd have to ignore a lot of prior operating history right now. Donald Trump even mentions that the Iranians have talked tough for 47 years and don't have much bite. Senator Tom Cotton says the Iranians have never won a war but never lost a negotiation. And you look at that, at that history, and people have continued to consider the possibility that Iran is a very powerful military, not just someone who can fund terrorist proxies. But every time they've been challenged or hit, all these predictions of World War III and an outbreak of a broader conflict in the region, none of them ever come to pass, right? So this first 170 times that the Iranians have talked tough and suggested that they have more military capabilities than they let on, or let's call it have the worst case scenario of military intentions and abilities, none of that has ever come to fruition. So I'm going to go off past operating history. The first God knows how many times, that's not what materialized, and I doubt it will materialize this time.
Well, there you go. Maybe we can all sleep a bit better tonight. Matt, thank you ever so much. Matt Belinsky there, attorney, host of the Prevailing Narrative podcast. Are we going to see action against Iran? I kind of think if it happens, it will happen when we don't expect it. All of a sudden we'll wake up one day, look at the headlines, and it'll be like, whoa, there you go. I don't particularly want it, but I do want to see Iran put back in their box, basically. They've become a pariah state with only the worst friends in the world, people like Russia and China. And frankly, the rest of the region now don't even like Iran. They'll be happy to see things happen to that horrible regime and the Ayatollah. OK, well, this is the final advert break before I then go off air. So if you want to have a conversation with me, this is your only chance. 0344 499 1000 is the number to dial. I'd love to talk to some of you on the phone. Take us up to 10 o'clock with an interesting conversation. Let me know your thoughts on the story stories we have been talking about. 8722 is the number if you'd like to send a text like there were talk before you text, and you know that long number can also be used for WhatsApp. Back after this.
We genuinely are on resignation watch. There is absolutely no doubt about it. Labour MPs, they say, listen, Keir, your position is untenable. This is all about appointing that rat, Peter Mandelson, who faces a criminal investigation.
Can Keir Starmer survive the Mandelson scandal? We have breaking news for you. We've just been talking about, of course, Morgan McSweeney, the Chief of Staff. We've now had another resignation from Number 10. And Keir Starmer's Director of Communications, Tim Allen, has now also resigned. The plot is sickening. The noose is tightening.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, hello, hello. Shall we do some chitty chatteries? I think we should. Let's speak to Richard, who's in North London. Hi, Richard.
Hello, Alex. Good to talk to you again. Thinking about the young man who was quite disgracefully always being cancelled.
Dylan Kirk, the pianist.
It just occurs to me, we're going to. This has obviously been happening for some time. It's happening in the US as well, and I think we're going to need our own sort of cooperative societies or sort of credit unions, whereby we can help people that are actually going through this, because it could be widespread. It could be widespread. It could happen to anybody as well, and it would kind of serve two functions in a way, because obviously we could provide some sort of relief to people that have obviously lost their career or sort of losing their livelihood, and also, as you did tonight, we could start to help people if they can't get work from pubs that have perhaps cancelled them. Then it means that we could perhaps clubs again. Obviously, it's going to take time, but when you think about it, Alex, it took probably 200 or 300 years to get the first kind of, the cooperatives that provided healthcare services, in this country before the NHS. So it's almost like we kind of have to kind of fight a sort of culture war.
Yeah, I know. We should all sort of, be there and support each other and be able to pick each other up when we have been debanked or cancelled. I can see where you're coming from, but it does make sense. I think at the very least, when it comes to people like Dylan Kirk, we can all go and promote him. Listen to his music, give him some love. Because he was saying, actually, in that interview, what an impact it's had on him. Not just in terms of his earning potentials, but the psychological impact, that the hatred he's getting online. It's for a young person, it's extremely discombobulating. And I want to show people who have gone through this sort of stuff support. And I worry as well about people starting off now in their careers at a young age, because when I was growing up, when I was at university, what I said and did just stays in history. There's no photographic evidence. I wasn't writing things on social media. media. I wasn't a member of a political party. I wasn't campaigning. I wasn't going to protest. I was just having a good old time. And so my sort of misspent youth remains sort of not a threat to me as an adult, particularly. And I worry so much today, the direction of travel, the way things are going, where everything has a footprint online, and the amount of malice there is out there, that, you know, people could be doing something now and have no idea. They could be sort of 19 years old, and then when they get to 29, all of a sudden they look back and they've blown up their life because of something they've done, and that really worries me.
Yeah, and effectively, these people like Hope Not Hate, they're the kind of voluntary Stasi, aren't they, in a way? This is what they do. And you see this in America. They'll get together and they'll say there's a right-wing person speaking, let's deplatform them. But when you think about it, Alex, it works both ways. I mean, we've been forced to sit through 40 years of boring TV on children in need, and actually, when you think of the irony, over that time, the rape gangs thing has been going on. Yeah. So actually, they're the real children in need. So maybe we don't give to the BBC children in need, and maybe we start our own. And it kind of works both ways. You know, in a way we can sort of fight back.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like the left have sort of infiltrated and taken over everything and distorted it and rendered it useless or grim. And we need to start, you're right, pushing back against that. Richard, thank you ever so much. Let's have a chit-chat now with Chris in Sussex. Hi, Chris. Hello, Chris, are you there? Oh, I'm not sure whether Chris is there. I can see his name is here on my sort of... It's like being in a call centre, I suppose it is, because this is a talk radio station. But I see, like, the little things here, little coloured blocks with names in it for what's coming up. And I saw Chris in Sussex, and I was like, oh, that's great. Once I finish speaking to Richard, we'll flick him on. But there you are. We do not have Chris in Sussex. So, oh, is he back? Is he back? Have we got our Chris? No. All right, we can do some messages until we do manage to find Chris. Oh no, there's Chris. He's in green. That means Chris is connected. Hi, Chris.
Oh, I'm connected. I'm discombobulated, but I'm connected. Good
Yay! Good to have you.
Oh, we love your show. We love Plank of the Week. So, look, I'm trying to get my little brain around this Chagos thing with Philip Sands and Herma. Get me wrong, but they are still solicitors and they're still covered by the audits of the SRA and legal ombudsman. Now, there's the SRA handbooks. I studied the LTC some time ago. Stipulates, I think it's section 6, about conflict of interest. You cannot represent two clients at once if there's a conflict of interest. And from what I understand, Sands received money from the Mauritian state budget. Was it £8 million or something?
Yeah, 8.3 million is the reported amount for a 10-year contract, I think it was.
Yes, but still, if he's being paid handsomely by the taxpayer on this side of the water to broker a deal, which should be, okay, cessation, if that's what they want, but a good deal for Britain. How can it be of a good deal Britain if he's being given bunts by the Mauritius?
Oh, I see where you're coming from now, and I hadn't even thought of that. The idea that, he has been part of... I mean, I don't know whether he was contracted to write this deal on behalf of the UK government or whether he was writing up this deal on behalf of the Mauritians. It now happens to be the deal that the UK government is using. But what is potentially a conflict of interest is the fact that he's good friends with the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister is now putting this in national policy. That, to me, is really shady. But it would be interesting to know if he has essentially been contracted by both parties in this.
Yeah, the thing is he has to be, because he is still being paid a wage out of the state. Both he and Herma are KCs, and therefore state,
Oh, of course, yeah, because they are KCs. They will be receiving taxpayer-funded earnings.
Yeah. So, I mean, imagine if I wanted to sell my house, okay, and I went to my solicitor. My solicitor actually made a sweet deal with a buyer to actually pull down the price or something like that. It's just, that's why the rules are very strict. You cannot represent multiple clients with more than 2 or more clients if it is a conflict of interest, and there is definitely a conflict of interest there. And another, it actually makes sense as to why suddenly this Chagos deal reared its ugly head when it had been kicked into the long grass by the Tories. It just makes absolute sense as to why it is. And Herma said he didn't, Sam said, I didn't know how much I received. Well, I can pull up my bank statement right now on my mobile phone. I know exactly what's in my account. And also, Starmer said he wasn't aware of what's going on. And
didn't he go on a trip though? This is what I don't understand. He wasn't aware, but I think he went on a little jolly over to Mauritius. So there's a lot of things that people who know what they're doing should look into for sure.
And Sands also was seen to say he wanted to humiliate the UK allegedly, and allegedly flew a Chagossian, a Mauritian flag in Chagos. That's a vested interest, and therefore is another. Like a Peter Mandelson type appointment of extremely poor judgment, at the very least, and ignorance at the very latest. I just wonder, and if there's anybody out there who's a legal eagle or a Chagossian or something, if perhaps the SRA and the legal ombudsman are aware of exactly what went on and whether it does represent a conflict of interest.
It's very interesting, actually, and I do think that, someone should pick this up and look into it. If not, and people are exonerated, fine, but this is the handing of UK territory, critical UK territory, critical for us and America and global security. Yep. So this isn't just a case of, out of vengeance or because you don't like their politics going after someone. This is a very important matter. And Chris, I think you're right. Thank you for sharing all of that with me. I've tried to note some of the stuff down because I'm quite insistent that this gets looked into. I don't think I'm the last to do it, but I can think of some people who might be able to do that. So let's see where we go. Chris, thank you ever so much. What a fascinating phone call that was. Hey, I haven't spoken to her for ages. Shall we have a chat with Cindy in Michigan? Hi, Cindy.
Alex! I love when you're on. You make me so happy.
Oh, wow. That's nice to hear.
Yes. I love it. Well, you know what? I left a voicemail for you about, I had a story for Weird Hour.
Oh, go on then. Let's have a weird 5 minutes.
You want that one?
Yeah,
okay.
Go for it.
Okay. When I was growing up, I was probably 6 or 7. We had this cat that would come over. It wasn't ours, but it was a neighbor's, and the cat's name was Chesty.
Chesty.
And Chesty, I don't know why. I have no idea why they named it Chesty. Yeah, which is strange also. Okay, so this cat would come over all the time, and it would end up getting hit by a car. Right? And I would find this out because I'd come home from school and ask my mom, well, why is the cat hiding in the garage? And she would say, well, I guess it got hit by a car. I guess it got hit by a car, she would say. My parents weren't into animals.
Right.
They were very, I come from a Hispanic Mexican background, and they're not into pets. Stereotypically, and they were they weren't into pets, and they didn't care about pets. They weren't loving.
So
the
what ends up happening with Chesty? I'm trying to see where the happiness is in this or the weirdness. So far, we've got a cat who might have been hit by a car, and I'm not for that.
Okay. Well, Chesty would end up surviving, but Chesty would be just a little bit kind of messed up, and then she got hit again, and then she would always survive. This cat, well, her tongue ended up hanging out of her mouth this last time she got hit by a car. No, but she was happy. She was happy. She was a tough kitty cat. And believe me, whenever I saw her, I loved on her like crazy because I'm an animal lover. I always have been.
Well, good old
Chesty was the survivor, yes.
So the weird thing about Chesty is the fact that she kept going back into the road, playing with cars, getting hit, and just didn't mind.
Yeah. And I wanted to say on a side note, I love Dylan Kirk. I looked up his music. He is can I say badass on TV?
Yeah, you can.
He is. I mean, his music, he's a rockabilly. What we call here in America, he's a rockabilly guy, rockabilly music.
Yeah, do you know what? I might listen to him on my commute home, and while thinking about Chesty the cat. Cindy, I love a good cat story. Not so how for I am cats being hit by cars as a narrative, but as long as Chesty survived, that's what's important. And I'm just going to say, Mum, if you've got this playing out in the sitting room on telly box and Mog's there listening, tell her to be careful. I don't want to get any ideas about Chesty. I love my little cat. Just you watch. Don't you be influencing her to go and do mad things in road. She can play in the back garden. She can catch as many birds and mice as she likes, but there's no going near that road. Cindy, thank you so much. Thank you for your call, my darling. Right, should we wrap up with just a few final messages? Because we've got, we've basically got about 2 minutes to go. Oh, I love it. Glyn's reminding me of that brilliant speech that Ricky Gervais made. Was it the Golden Globes or the Oscars? Golden Globes, where he says, nobody cares, thank your agent and your God, and then beep, off. Oh, yeah. I love Ricky Gervais. That was just brilliant. Oh, young Jack says, as a keen cyclist, I'm quite partial to treating myself to some unforgiving Lycra apparel. But most cycling clothing companies have also followed the DEI box ticking and have black models advertising their wares, a demographic that make up a very small percentage of the cycling community. I thought that when I started reading that message, I thought it was going to go in a completely different direction, something anatomical. But thankfully it did not. I must admit, during lockdown especially, when every single man on earth seemed to form a peloton, and they all ran out and bought like Tour de France gear, and I was like, dude, you're 56 years old, you're called Alan, you're a bit overweight, you like cycling to the pub, you do not need to dress up like Chris Boardman, okay? Just wear your normal attire for this. We don't need to see it. Good evening, Alex. Great show as always. Thank you. Personally, I think after the atrocities in Iran, Trump is a little late, but he should strike. I'm saddened our weak, spineless Prime Minister isn't supporting him. He isn't just ruining this country, but making the world distance itself from what used to be Great Britain. But this is it. Not only is he not helping, he's actively hindering with all this